Let us begin with a story, perhaps one you know well, because in some ways it is your own. It is the story of a person we will call Alex. To the outside world, Alex is a portrait of success. The job is respected, the car gleams under the city lights, the apartment sits high above the noise, its windows filled with the glow of a sprawling metropolis. Alex has followed the map that was given, has ticked the boxes, has climbed the prescribed ladder. Yet, in the quiet moments, after the meetings have ended and the notifications have been silenced, a profound sense of unease settles in. It is a quiet hollowness, a persistent feeling of being a stranger in one's own life. There is a constant, low hum of anxiety, a feeling of chasing a horizon that recedes with every step taken towards it. The more Alex acquires, the more the feeling of not enough deepens. It is a strange and exhausting paradox. To run so hard and yet feel completely stuck. This condition, this state of being that Alex experiences is not a personal failure. It is the quiet ailment of our time. It is a fundamental disconnection. We are taught from our first breath to seek contentment, validation, and a sense of richness from the world outside ourselves. We pursue objects, titles, and the approval of others, believing they are the ingredients of a happy life. But this approach is like drinking salt water to quench a thirst. For a fleeting moment, the craving is soothed, but it is always followed by a deeper, more agonizing thirst than before. This persistent state of anxiety, of striving without arriving, of feeling a deep lack no matter how much we have, can be thought of as a low frequency. It is not a mystical vibration, but a tangible state of mind. A consciousness clouded by the fog of wanting, of comparing, of fearing. A mind in this state cannot synchronize with peace. It cannot resonate with true abundance, because it is fundamentally tuned to the frequency of scarcity. But there is another way, an ancient path that offers not a secret trick, but a profound retuning of our inner world. This wisdom teaches that the source of richness is not something we must chase and acquire, but a state of being we must cultivate within. It is not a magical formula for attracting money into your life, but a deep, transformative journey to uncover the only wealth that is real and lasting. The wealth of a peaceful mind, the richness of a compassionate heart, and the abundance of clear-seeing wisdom. It suggests that the single most important book you will ever need to read, the only manual required to synchronize with this true wealth, is the book of your own mind. And the teachings of an ancient prince, who became known as the Buddha, offer us the opening chapters. They provide the map, not to a treasure chest of gold, but to the unshakable treasure of inner freedom. To understand the path toward a life of genuine richness, we must first be unflinchingly honest about the landscape we currently inhabit. We must look closely at the very nature of the chase itself. The modern world is built upon a single, powerful promise, that happiness lies at the end of a pursuit. It is the carrot dangling just ahead, the next promotion, the newer phone, the bigger house, the perfect relationship, the validation from 1,000 unseen faces on a screen. We are born onto a treadmill that is already moving, and we are told to run. We believe, with every fiber of our being, that the destination is real, that there is a finish line where we can finally stop, catch our breath, and be at peace. But the great, unspoken secret is that the finish line is a mirage. The pursuit itself is the mechanism that perpetuates our discontent. This is the grand illusion of the chase. The wisdom of the Buddha begins with a simple, yet profoundly radical observation. It is called the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. The word dukkha, from the ancient Pali language, is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far more subtle and encompassing. To think of it as constant misery would be a mistake. Rather, dukkha refers to a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a subtle friction that permeates all of our conditioned experiences. It is the feeling that things are never quite right, never permanently stable. It is the pleasure of a warm cup of coffee that inevitably cools. It is the joy of a new purchase that fades into the familiarity of ownership. It is the success of achieving a goal which almost immediately gives way to the question, what's next? It is the background anxiety that hums beneath the surface of even our most pleasant days. It is the inherent precariousness of life, the knowledge that everything we hold dear, our health, our loved ones, our very existences subject to change without our consent. To acknowledge dukkha is not to be pessimistic, it is to be a realist. It is to finally stop pretending that the treadmill has a destination, and instead to look at the nature of the treadmill itself. If dukkha is the diagnosis, The second noble truth points directly to the cause of the condition. The cause, the Buddha explained, is a state of mind called tanha. This is translated as thirst or craving, and it is the engine that drives the endless chase. This is the salt water. Tanha is not simply wanting something. It is the desperate, clinging, feverish thirst for life to be different than it is. This thirst manifests in three primary forms. First, there is the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the most obvious form of craving. It is the pull towards delicious tastes, beautiful sights, pleasant sounds, and appealing sensations. It is the desire for comfort, for luxury, for every experience to be delightful. We arrange our lives in a frantic pursuit of these pleasures, believing they are the source of happiness. But each pleasure is fleeting, like a beautiful soap bubble that bursts the moment we try to grasp it, leaving us with wet hands and a renewed sense of longing. The second form is the thirst for existence, or the thirst to become. This is a deeper, more subtle craving. It is the craving of the ego. It is the relentless drive to become someone to be seen as successful, intelligent, virtuous, or special. It is the engine behind our ambition, our constant self-improvement projects, our curated online personas. We are addicted to the idea of a future, better version of ourselves, and we live in a state of perpetual striving towards this idealized image. We believe that if we can just become that person, we will finally be worthy of peace. But this too is an unquenchable thirst. The ego is a bottomless pit. No amount of success or recognition can ever permanently fill it. The moment one level of becoming is achieved, a new, higher level appears on the horizon. The third form of thirst is perhaps the most insidious, the thirst for non-existence. This is the craving to escape. When the pursuit of pleasure and the project of becoming lead to inevitable frustration and exhaustion, the mind seeks annihilation. This is the desire to numb out, to not feel the sharp edges of reality. It manifests as our addictions to substances, to mindless entertainment, to doom scrolling, to anything that can offer a temporary reprieve from our own inner world. It is the wish that an unpleasant feeling would just go away, that a difficult situation would simply vanish. It is a turning away from life, a subtle wish for oblivion. Together, these three forms of thirst create a closed loop, a self-perpetuating cycle of suffering. The pursuit of pleasure leads to disappointment, which fuels the desperate need to become someone better, which in turn leads to exhaustion and the desire to escape, which only leaves us feeling more empty, thus renewing our desperate thirst for a pleasurable distraction. This is the cycle of salt water. Let us trace this cycle, this illusion of the chase, in the life of our friend Alex. The initial unease, the dukkha, manifests as a thought. If I get that promotion, then I will be happy, I will be secure, I will be respected. This is the birth of tanha, the thirst to become. This single thought now becomes the organizing principle of Alex's life. Long hours are worked, sacrifices are made, life is put on hold. The entire focus of existence is the attainment of this goal. The chase is all-consuming. Then, the day comes. The promotion is granted. There is a flood of relief, a surge of pride, a moment of real pleasure. This is the first gulp of salt water. It feels, for a moment, like it is quenching the thirst. But what happens next? Within a few weeks, or perhaps a few months, the new role becomes the new normal. The higher salary is absorbed by new expenses. The new responsibilities bring new anxieties. The initial pleasure has vanished, and the underlying feeling of unease, of dukkha, returns. It was never truly gone. It was merely masked by the intensity of the chase. Now, the mind, conditioned to believe the solution is always out there, does not question the logic of the chase itself. Instead, it concludes that the goal was simply not big enough. The thirst returns, stronger this time. The promotion wasn't it, the mind whispers. But that corner office, that executive title, that will be the thing. That will finally fix it. A new, more ambitious goal is set, and the cycle begins again, with more intensity, more desperation. With each lap around this track, Alex becomes more exhausted, more cynical, more disconnected from the simple joys of life that are being sacrificed along the way. The chase for external validation is a flight from internal emptiness. We run so hard towards the future because we are afraid to stand still in the present. We fill our lives with noise and activity because we are terrified of the silence, terrified of what we might find if we were to simply stop and look within. We believe if we can just arrange all the furniture in the world perfectly, we won't have to feel the discomfort in our own heart. But the discomfort is the point. It is the signal, the check engine light, telling us that the way we are operating is fundamentally unsustainable. The illusion of the chase is the belief that we can outrun ourselves. But the one thing we can never escape is our own mind. And so, we must ask the fundamental question. If this frantic chase, this constant thirst, this drinking of salt water is the very source of our disquiet, our low-frequency static, what is the alternative? If running faster on the treadmill will never lead to peace, perhaps the answer is not in running at all. Perhaps the first step is to simply stop, to step off the machine, to put down the cup of salt water, and to finally examine the nature of the thirst itself. If true wealth is not found in what we can acquire, then it must be found in how we relate to the world. If our frequency is not determined by what we have, but by how we are, then what is the nature of this inner state? How do we begin to change, not the world around us, but the very quality of the consciousness that experiences it? This is the turning point of the journey. It is the shift from looking outside to looking in. Having seen that the endless chase for external rewards is a path of ever-increasing thirst, we arrive at a critical turning point. It prompts us to redefine the very goal of our journey. The popular language of our time speaks of raising your frequency or lifting your vibration, ideas that carry an intuitive appeal, suggesting a shift from a heavy, dense state of being to one that is light, free, and resonant. While this language is useful, the wisdom of the Buddha invites us to ground this concept in a way that is profoundly practical, deeply psychological, and immediately accessible. From this ancient perspective, frequency is not some mystical energy field floating in the ether that we must learn to attract. It is the very quality, the texture, and the state of our own mind, our own consciousness in this present moment. The Pali word for this is chitta. Your citta, your mind-heart, is the source of your frequency. The entire universe you experience is filtered through it, colored by it. Therefore, to raise your frequency is not to change the world, but to undertake the far more powerful and effective work of transforming the mind that perceives it. Let us first explore what constitutes a low-frequency state of mind. In the Buddhist framework, these are known as akusala chitta, or unskillful states of consciousness. An unskillful state is not sinful or bad in a moralistic sense. It is called unskillful simply because it reliably leads to agitation, confusion, and suffering for oneself and for others. A mind in an unskillful state is contracted, like a fist clenched in fear or anger. It is murky, like a glass of water stirred with mud, unable to see its own nature clearly. It is agitated, like a frantic monkey swinging from branch to branch, never at rest. What are these states? They are the very fabric of the chase we just examined. They are the states of craving, of desperate wanting, of clinging to pleasure and pushing away pain. They are the states of aversion, irritation, frustration, and outright anger. They are the states of jealousy, envy, and arrogance. They are the states of anxiety, worry, and restless fear about the future. When your mind is dominated by these qualities, you are operating on a low frequency. Your experience of life will be one of friction, of struggle, of being at odds with the world, because your mind itself is in a state of internal conflict. This is the static that drowns out the signal of peace. In stark contrast, a high-frequency state of mind is called kusala chitta, a skillful state of consciousness. It is skillful because it naturally and reliably leads to clarity, tranquility, and genuine well-being for oneself and for others. A mind in a skillful state is expansive, like an open hand, ready to give and receive. It is clear, like a calm mountain lake, reflecting the sky with perfect fidelity. It is stable, like a deeply rooted old tree, able to withstand the winds of change. What are these high-frequency states? They are the direct antidotes to the low-frequency ones. They are states of generosity and letting go. They are states of loving kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. They are states of gratitude and appreciative joy for the good fortune of others. They are states of patience, equanimity, and calm acceptance of life as it unfolds. And underpinning all of these is the foundational quality of mindfulness, the clear, non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. When these qualities are present, your mind is operating at a high frequency. Your experience of life becomes one of greater ease, harmony, and connection, not because the world has changed, but because the instrument through which you perceive the world has been finely tuned. Perhaps the most helpful way to understand this is to imagine that your mind is a garden. For many of us, we have been absent gardeners. We have allowed our mental gardens to be sown by the random winds of culture, advertising, and personal history. Consequently, our gardens are overgrown with weeds. These weeds are the unskillful, low-frequency mental states. The weeds of anxiety, of resentment, of habitual complaint, of mindless craving. They grow effortlessly, choking out the light and draining the soil of its nutrients. To raise your frequency is to consciously decide to become the gardener of your own mind. This is not a passive activity. It requires dedication and consistent effort. The work begins with learning to identify the weeds. You must walk through your garden with the light of mindfulness and honestly acknowledge what is growing there. You must see the weeds of anger not as righteous indignation, but as invasive plants that poison the soil of your peace. You must see the weeds of jealousy not as a motivator, but as a thorny vine that constricts your heart. Once you can see the weeds, the next step is to stop watering them. Every time you indulge in a resentful thought, every time you replay an angry conversation in your head, every time you feed a craving through mindless consumption, you are watering the weeds. The practice is to notice these mental habits as they arise and to gently withdraw your energy from them. You let them be, without giving them the fuel of your attention, and eventually they will wither. But pulling weeds is only half the work. A skillful gardener also cultivates what they wish to grow. You must consciously and deliberately plant the seeds of skillful, high-frequency states. You plant the seed of gratitude by taking time each day to recall what you are thankful for. You plant the seed of compassion by intentionally wishing for others to be free from suffering. You plant the seed of generosity by performing small acts of kindness without seeking recognition. At first, these flowers and fruits may seem small and fragile compared to the thickets of weeds, but with consistent cultivation, they will grow stronger, their roots will deepen, and they will eventually transform the entire landscape of your mind. Your citta, your consciousness, will become a place of beauty, nourishment, and peace. This is not just a pleasant metaphor, it points to a profound truth about the nature of reality. Your state of mind does not just color your experience. In a very real sense, it creates it. Imagine a sudden downpour on a summer afternoon. This event, in itself, is neutral. It is simply water falling from the sky. Now, consider two people experiencing this event. The first person, Alex, had plans to go for a run. The moment the rain begins, Alex's mind enters an unskillful state of aversion. Thoughts like, "This is terrible. My whole afternoon is ruined. Why does this always happen to me?" begin to spiral. The body tenses up, the brow furrows. A feeling of frustration permeates their entire being. For Alex, the reality of this moment is one of misery and conflict. The rain is an antagonist. Now consider another person, Bailey, sitting by a nearby window. Bailey's mind is in a skillful state of receptivity. As the rain begins, Bailey pauses, listens to the rhythmic drumming on the roof, and watches the leaves of the trees glisten with water. A sense of calm and appreciation arises. The thought might be, "How beautiful, the earth needs this." For Bailey, the reality of this exact same moment is one of peace and connection. The rain is a symphony. The external event was identical for both. The only difference was the internal frequency, the state of the chitta. One mind was contracted and resistant, the other was open and receptive. One was a clenched fist, the other an open palm. They were, quite literally, living in two different universes, determined not by the rain, but by the quality of their own consciousness. This is the ultimate empowerment. It means that while you cannot always control the weather of your life, you have the power to cultivate the inner climate of your mind. The key to transforming your experience of the world is not to manipulate external events, but to become a skillful gardener of your inner world. So, if we are to take on this sacred and life-altering work of tending to our inner garden, where do we begin? The first, most practical step is to learn to identify the most common, most powerful, and most destructive weeds. Ancient wisdom has long pointed to a primary trio of these invasive plants, the roots from which all other unskillful states emerge. They are known as the three poisons, the fundamental sources of the mind's static and agitation. What then are these primary weeds? What are the fundamental roots of the low-frequency states that choke the life from our inner garden and keep us trapped in the illusion of the chase? Understanding these is the essential next step on our journey inward. If we are to become skillful gardeners of our minds, to cultivate a high frequency of being, we must first learn the botany of our own suffering. We must become experts at identifying the invasive species that drain our vitality and prevent the flowers of peace from blooming. Ancient wisdom does not present us with a bewildering catalogue of countless mental weeds. Instead, it points to three primary taproots. The akusala mula, from which almost all other forms of mental distress and unskillful states emerge. These are known as the three poisons. They are the fundamental sources of the low-frequency static that disrupts our lives. To know them is to begin the process of liberation. They are not moral sins to be judged, but deep-seated cognitive and emotional habits to be understood with clarity and compassion. These three poisons are greed, hatred, and delusion. The first poison, known in Pali as lobha, is greed or attachment. At first glance, we might think of this as a simple desire for material wealth, but its reach is far more extensive and its nature far more subtle. Greed is the energy of clinging, of grasping, of pulling the world toward ourselves with a clenched fist. It is the insatiable thirst, the tanha we spoke of earlier, in its active, seeking form. It is the whisper that says, I need this to be happy. This can be anything: a new car, a perfect body, a prestigious title, the affection of a specific person, or even a particular spiritual state. The mind poisoned by greed operates from a deep underlying assumption of scarcity. It believes that it is fundamentally lacking, that there is a hole in the center of its being that must be filled with something from the outside. The tragic irony of greed is that it is a self-perpetuating cycle of dissatisfaction. It is a hunger that grows with feeding. The moment one object of desire is obtained, the fleeting pleasure of acquisition evaporates, and the mind immediately fastens onto the next object. The person who believes $1 million will solve their problems achieves it, only to find that the new reference point for enough is now 10 million. The person who craves social validation gets 1,000 likes on a photo and for a moment feels whole, but an hour later feels the familiar pang of emptiness and the need for another dose of approval. This is the very definition of a low frequency. The mind is in a constant state of agitation, of striving, of leaning into a future where it imagines it will finally be complete. It cannot rest in the present moment because the present moment is, by definition, never enough for a mind consumed by greed. It is a state of perpetual poverty, regardless of one's external wealth. The second poison is dosa, which can be translated as hatred, aversion, or ill will. If greed is the energy of pulling things toward you, hatred is the violent energy of pushing things away. It is the force of rejection. Just as greed arises from the mistaken belief that something external will bring us lasting pleasure, hatred arises from the mistaken belief that something external is the true cause of our pain. It operates on a spectrum, from the subtle irritation you feel when someone is driving too slowly, to the simmering resentment you hold against a colleague, to the explosive rage that can destroy relationships in an instant. It is the energy of no, a fundamental resistance to the way things are. The great teachers have compared harboring hatred to holding a hot coal in your hand with the intention of throwing it at someone else. Who gets burned first? You do. Hatred is a uniquely self-destructive poison. It floods our own system with stress hormones, contracts our body and mind, and consumes vast amounts of mental energy in replaying grievances and plotting revenge. It poisons our perception, making us see enemies and threats where there are none. A mind dominated by aversion is a mind at war with reality. It lives in a world of constant conflict because it is always finding things that are wrong, things that need to be corrected, resisted, or eliminated. It cannot find peace because it is addicted to the struggle. This is a state of profound inner turmoil, a frequency of jarring, painful noise that makes connection, forgiveness, and peace impossible. These two poisons, greed and hatred, the pulling and the pushing, are a familiar pair. They are the two sides of the coin of dissatisfaction, but they are both sustained and nourished by a third, even deeper poison, the taproot of all suffering. This is moha, or delusion. Delusion, in this context, does not mean seeing hallucinations. It means a fundamental ignorance or misperception of the true nature of reality. It is the deep, underlying cognitive error that makes greed and hatred seem like logical responses. It is the thick fog of confusion that prevents us from seeing things as they truly are. We are not ignorant of facts and data. We are ignorant of the laws that govern our own happiness and suffering. What is it that we are deluded about? Primarily, we are deluded about the nature of impermanence. We act as if things are solid and permanent, and so we desperately cling to pleasant experiences, greed, and violently resist unpleasant ones. hatred, forgetting that both are, by their very nature, transient clouds passing through the sky of our awareness. We are also deluded about the nature of the self. We operate from the unquestioned assumption that we are a solid, separate, isolated I at the center of the universe. This false sense of a separate self is the very entity that feels lack, leading to greed, and feels threatened, leading to hatred. Delusion is the darkness that allows these two thieves to rob us of our peace. It is the belief that the salt water will quench our thirst. It is the belief that the hot coal will only burn the other person. It is the fundamental confusion that keeps us running on the treadmill, forever chasing mirages and fighting with shadows. To bring this into focus, let us return to the image of a house. Imagine a beautiful, stately home. This house is our life. From the outside, it may look impressive. It has a good career, a nice family, a respectable place in the community, all the external markers of success. But inside the walls of this beautiful house, 3 fires have been secretly burning. Greed is a hungry, consuming fire in the living room. It devours every new object, every achievement, every compliment, and immediately demands more fuel. It licks at the foundations of contentment, turning everything it touches into the ashes of dissatisfaction. In the kitchen, hatred is an acidic chemical fire. It doesn't roar, it corrodes. It silently eats away at the pipes of communication, dissolves the bonds of relationships, and weakens the very structure of our inner peace with the toxic fumes of bitterness and resentment. But the most dangerous fire of all is raging in the basement. This is the fire of delusion. It is a slow, smoldering fire that produces a thick, black, intoxicating smoke. The smoke seeps up through the floorboards and fills every room of the house. This smoke of confusion is what prevents us from seeing the other 2 fires clearly. It numbs our senses. It makes us think the destructive heat of greed is a comforting warmth. It makes us believe the corrosive smell of hatred is the scent of justice. The smoke is so thick that we cannot find the doors or window. We stumble around in the darkness of our own minds, feeling for a solid wall that is no longer there, unaware that the entire structure is being consumed from within and is destined to collapse. This is the state of a life dominated by the 3 poisons. No matter how much we redecorate the exterior, no matter how much we landscape the garden, the house is being destroyed from the inside out. Seeing this is not cause for despair, but for a sober and urgent awakening. It is the moment a person asleep in a burning house finally smells the smoke. It is the realization that the problem is not outside, but inside, and that the tools for decoration are useless when what is needed are the tools of a firefighter. Now that we have identified these 3 fires raging within the house of our mind, we must ask the most urgent question of all. What is the first tool we need? What is the extinguisher that can begin to quell the flames? What is the light that can pierce through the thick smoke of delusion and allow us to see the fires for what they are, so that we may finally begin the work of putting them out? In the terrifying realization that our own house is on fire, consumed from within by the flames of greed, hatred, and delusion, our first instinct is to panic. We want to find a powerful hose, a grand solution to violently extinguish the blaze all at once. But the wisdom traditions offer a different starting point, a tool that is far quieter, infinitely more subtle, and yet profoundly more powerful. Before you can fight a fire, you must first be able to see it clearly, to understand its nature without being consumed by the smoke of your own fear. The first and most essential tool, therefore, is not a fire hose, but a simple flashlight. This flashlight is the practice of mindfulness. It is the foundational skill upon which all inner transformation is built. It is the light that pierces the smoke. What is mindfulness? The word has become so common that its true depth is often lost. Let us be very clear about what it is not. Mindfulness is not about emptying your mind. It is not about stopping your thoughts or forcing yourself into a state of artificial calm. The attempt to stop your thoughts is itself a form of aversion, another manifestation of the second poison, hatred. It is like trying to flatten a stormy ocean with a hammer. The effort only creates more violent waves. Mindfulness is not a battle to be won against your own mind. It is a peace treaty to be signed with it. The Pali word for mindfulness is sati, and it carries the meaning of to remember or to bear in mind. It is the gentle, intentional act of remembering to pay attention to our experience, right here, right now, without judgment. It is simply turning on the lights in a dark room. You don't create or destroy the furniture. You just see what is already there, the beautiful chair, the cluttered desk, the dust bunnies in the corner. You see it all with clarity and acceptance. The practice of mindfulness begins with an anchor, a place to rest our wandering attention. The most common and reliable anchor is the breath. Your breath is a magnificent tool for a simple reason. It is always with you, and it is always happening in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past, nor can you breathe in the future. To be aware of your breath is, by definition, to be here now. The instruction is disarmingly simple. Find a comfortable position and bring your awareness to the physical sensations of breathing. Feel the air entering your nostrils, cool and fresh. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest and abdomen. You are not trying to control the breath or change it in any way. You are simply resting your awareness on it, as you would rest your hand on a sleeping cat. Inevitably, your mind will wander. It will be pulled away by a thought, a memory, a worry, a plan. This is not a failure. This is the moment the practice truly begins. Your task is not to scold yourself, but to gently and kindly notice that the mind has wandered, and then, with the tenderness of a loving parent, guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath. Each time you do this, you are building the muscle of mindfulness. You are strengthening your ability to be present, to be aware, to be the master of your own attention. This simple practice has a radical consequence. It creates a space. In our normal, unobserved lives, we operate on a hair trigger of stimulus and reaction. An email with a critical tone arrives, stimulus, and instantly, a wave of defensive anger surges through us, reaction. A craving for something sweet arises, stimulus. And before we know it, we are rummaging through the pantry, reaction. We live as puppets, our strings pulled by the random events of the world and the habitual patterns of our mind. Mindfulness introduces a sacred pause between stimulus and response. The critical email still arrives. But because you have been practicing, you can notice the anger as it arises within you. You can feel it as a flush of heat in your chest, a tightening in your jaw, a cascade of angry thoughts. You see it, but you are not swept away by it. You are the sky, and the anger is a dark cloud passing through. Because you can see it, a space opens up. In that space lies your freedom. You are no longer compelled to send a reactive, aggressive reply. You have the choice to breathe, to wait, to understand, and to respond from a place of wisdom and calm, rather than from a place of wounded reactivity. This space is the difference between being a prisoner of your own mind and being its compassionate warden. It is in this space that we stop feeding the fires of greed and hatred. To deepen our understanding, we can use the parable of the gatekeeper. Imagine your mind is a great, fortified city. Without mindfulness, there is no one at the gate. The gates are wide open, and anyone or anything can wander in and wreak havoc. Anxious thoughts, like spies, sneak in and spread rumors of disaster. Angry thoughts, like bandits, storm through, smashing property and terrorizing the citizens. Cravings, like drunkards, stumble in and demand satisfaction, creating chaos and mess wherever they go. The city is in a constant state of turmoil because it is unguarded. Mindfulness is the wise, calm, and vigilant gatekeeper who is installed at the city gates. The gatekeeper's job is not to fight and kill everyone who approaches. Their job is simply to see and to know. When a visitor arrives at the gate, the mindful gatekeeper doesn't panic. They simply raise their lantern and ask, "Who are you, and what is your business here?" When an angry thought arrives, the gatekeeper doesn't try to slay it. They simply recognize, the visitor named anger has arrived. I see you. When a wave of sadness comes to the gatekeeper acknowledges it. Sadness is here. I will note its presence. By simply being seen, acknowledged, and named, the visitors lose their power to create chaos secretly. The bandits cannot run rampant if the city guard is tracking their every move. The spies cannot spread rumors if their identity is known to all. The visitors may still enter the city, but they cannot take it over. They are seen as what they are, temporary guests, not permanent residents. The city of the mind, guarded by mindfulness, becomes a place of order, safety, and peace. This is the very practical, moment-to-moment work of shifting your frequency. When you are lost in a storm of worry, your entire being is vibrating at the low frequency of fear. But the moment you become mindful of the worry, the moment you can say to yourself, this is the feeling of worry, you are no longer the worry itself. You are the awareness that is noticing the worry. In that instant, a shift occurs. You have moved to a higher ground, a place of observation. You are no longer drowning in the flood. You are standing on the bank, watching the water flow by. This is the beginning of disidentifying from our toxic mental states. They are not me, they are simply events in me. They are weather patterns, not the sky itself. With this foundational tool, this flashlight of mindful awareness, now firmly in our grasp, we are no longer helpless victims in our burning house. We are no longer stumbling in the smoke-filled darkness. We have a source of light. It may be small at first, like a single candle, but it is enough. It is enough to see the outlines of the flames, to discern the nature of the fires, and to find our footing. With this light, we can now approach the first and perhaps the most relentless of the three fire-stay, hungry, consuming fire of greed. We no longer need to be mesmerized by its dance or terrified of its heat. Armed with the calm, steady light of mindfulness, we can begin to investigate its nature, to understand what fuels it, and to learn the gentle, liberating art of simply letting go. With the flashlight of mindfulness in our hand, we can now turn and face the first of the great fires, the insatiable, consuming blaze of greed. Our initial impulse, conditioned by a lifetime of struggle, might be to fight it, to suppress it, to wrestle it into submission. But mindfulness teaches us a more skillful approach. We do not need to destroy the fire. We need to stop throwing fuel on it. The art of dealing with greed is the gentle, liberating practice of letting go. It is the conscious decision to unclench the fist of the mind and allow the world to be as it is. This is the direct path from the inner poverty of scarcity to the profound wealth of sufficiency. First, it is crucial to understand what letting go truly means in this context, for the term is easily misunderstood. Letting go is not apathy. It is not indifference, laziness, or a justification for abdicating our responsibilities. It does not mean you stop caring for your family, abandon your goals, or cease to strive for excellence in your work. To let go is not to release the action, but to release the attachment to the outcome of that action. It is the difference between holding a small bird in an open palm versus a clenched fist. In the open palm, the bird is free to stay or to fly away. There is care, but no anxious possession. In the clenched fist, you may hold the bird, but you will crush it, and your own hand will be trapped in the act of holding. Letting go is the radical act of opening the hand of the mind, allowing life to flow through our experience without our needing to grasp at it and hold it prisoner. To practice this, we must use our mindfulness to make a subtle but critical distinction between two kinds of wanting: skillful desire and unskillful craving. Not all desire is a poison. A skillful desire, known in Pali as chanda, is a wholesome aspiration that motivates us toward well-being. The desire to be a kinder person, the desire to learn a new skill, the desire for our loved ones to be happy and free from harm. These are positive, expansive energies. They are the winds that fill our sails and move us in a positive direction. This kind of desire is open-handed. Unskillful craving, or tanha, is the poison of greed we have been examining. It is different in its texture, its feeling. It is tight, feverish, and contracted. It carries the signature of "I must have this," or "I will not be okay." Chanda says, "I will work skillfully on this presentation as I aspire to do good work." Tanha says, "I must receive praise for this presentation, otherwise it proves I am a failure." Chanda says, "I wish for my friend to be well." Tanha says, "I need my friend to stop being sad because their sadness is making me uncomfortable." Seeing this difference is a profound insight. The spiritual path is not about becoming desireless, but about purifying our desires, transforming the clenched fist of craving into the open hand of aspiration. The practical work of letting go is the work of starving the fire of craving. It begins with noticing. Using your mindfulness, you learn to recognize the feeling of lack or scarcity the moment it arises. It might be a subtle pang of jealousy when you see someone's vacation photos. It might be a sudden, urgent desire for a new gadget you see in an advertisement. It might be the restless feeling that this present moment is somehow deficient and needs to be improved. The first step is simply to acknowledge it without judgment. Ah, the mind of wanting is here. The next step is to bring your awareness into your body. Where do you feel this wanting? Is it an emptiness in the pit of your stomach? A tension in your shoulders? A frantic energy in your hands? By grounding the abstract emotion in a physical sensation, you rob it of its narrative power. It is no longer a compelling story about your inadequacy. It is simply a raw, physical energy. Now comes the most radical part of the practice. Your every habit and instinct will scream at you to do something, to fix this uncomfortable feeling, to buy the thing, to seek the validation, to distract yourself. The practice of letting go is to consciously do nothing. You simply sit with the raw sensation of wanting. You breathe into it. You observe it with a kind, curious attention, as a scientist might observe a strange new phenomenon. You ask it, what do you actually feel like? You hold it in your awareness, without feeding it and without pushing it away. And in doing this, you make the most profound discovery of all. The feeling changes. It crests like a wave, and then it subsides. It is impermanent. It is not solid. It is not you. This realization is the key that unlocks the prison of craving. The spell is broken. You learn, through direct experience, that you do not have to obey every impulse that arises in your mind. You can feel a craving and not act on it. In this, you reclaim your sovereignty. There is a classic Zen story that illustrates this principle perfectly. A learned university professor came to visit a Zen master to inquire about Zen. As the master began to speak, the professor repeatedly interrupted with his own ideas and interpretations. The Zen master listened patiently, then began to serve tea. He filled the professor's cup to the brim and then kept pouring, letting the tea overflow and spill onto the table. The horrified professor shouted, "It's full! No more will go in." The Zen master stopped pouring and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you anything about Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Our minds are just like that cup. They are filled to the brim with the stale, stagnant water of our attachments, our assumptions, our clinging, and our constant wanting. We are so full of the belief that we are lacking, so full of the chase for the next thing, that there is simply no room for anything else to enter. There is no space for peace. There is no room for contentment. There is no space for the simple joy of being alive. The art of letting go is the sacred act of emptying our cup. Each time we mindfully observe a craving without acting on it, we are pouring out a little of that stale water. We are creating space. We are making room for the fresh, clean water of presence and peace to be poured in. As you practice this, something remarkable begins to happen. As the frantic noise of wanting more begins to quiet down, your attention naturally begins to notice what is already here. The desperate search for what is absent is replaced by a gentle appreciation for what is present. This is the arising of santuti, or contentment. You begin to notice the warmth of the sun on your skin, the simple pleasure of a deep breath, the kindness in a stranger's eyes. You realize that the wealth you were chasing was never about accumulating more things. True wealth is found in the subtraction of our desires. True sufficiency is not an objective amount of money or possessions. It is a subjective state of mind. It is the deep, quiet, and joyful realization that in this moment, just as you are, with just what you have, you are fundamentally enough. The house of your mind, once consumed by the fire of wanting, now begins to cool. The air begins to clear. And in this newfound space, you discover a richness you never knew was possible. This art of emptying our cup, of releasing the clenched fist of greed, brings an incredible sense of peace and abundance. It is the pathway from the prison of scarcity to the open field of sufficiency. But as we skillfully allow the flames of this fire to subside, our steady light of awareness often reveals another fire raging on the other side of the room. This fire burns not with the heat of desire, but with the acid of rejection. What do we do when the mind wants not to pull things closer, but to violently push them away? What do we do with the hot coal of anger and the poison of aversion? This leads us to the next great work of inner alchemy, learning to meet hatred not with more violence, but with its powerful, transformative antidote. Having learned to open the clenched fist of greed and create space in our lives through the art of letting go, we turn our attention to its counterpart, the second of the three poisons. This is the fire of dosa, of hatred, aversion, and ill will. If greed is the desperate pulling toward, aversion is the violent pushing away. It is the raw energy of rejection, the force that declares no to reality. It is the hot, corrosive poison that we feel when we are wronged, insulted, or frustrated. Our instinct, when faced with this fire, is to use it as a weapon, to direct its heat outward and scorch the person or situation we believe is the cause of our pain. But the wisdom traditions reveal a startling truth. The first and primary victim of our own anger is always ourselves. The Buddha used a powerful simile to describe this process. Holding on to anger, he said, is like grasping a burning piece of coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. While you wait for the right moment, while you nurse your grievance and stoke the flames of your resentment? Who is being burned? The coal is searing your own flesh, charring your own hand. Anger is a poison you drink, hoping the other person will die. The immediate reality of anger is purely internal. It floods your own body with stress hormones, raises your own blood pressure, tightens your own muscles, and torments your own mind with obsessive, circular thinking. It is a state of profound self-harm, a low-frequency vibration of inner turmoil that makes peace, clarity, and happiness utterly impossible. The world may have provided the spark, but we are the ones who supply the fuel and build the bonfire within our own hearts. To work with this fire, we must first understand it. Anger is rarely a primary emotion. More often, it is a fierce guard dog protecting a softer, more vulnerable part of ourselves. Beneath the hard shell of anger, you will almost always find a tender core of hurt, fear, or disappointment. We feel hurt when our trust is betrayed. We feel fear when our safety or ego is threatened. We feel disappointed when reality fails to live up to our deeply held expectations. Anger rushes in as a defense mechanism, a surge of energy that makes us feel powerful in a moment of perceived powerlessness. The practice, then, is not to demonize the anger, but to use our mindfulness to look beneath it. When a wave of anger arises, can you pause, breathe, and gently ask yourself, what is the hurt that this anger is trying to protect? This compassionate inquiry begins the process of alchemy. The ultimate antidote to the poison of aversion is its polar opposite, karuna, or compassion. In our culture, compassion is often mistaken for pity, sentimentality, or a kind of weak-willed permission for others to treat us poorly. But in this tradition, compassion is understood as a form of profound strength, courage, and intelligence. Compassion is not about condoning a harmful act. It is about having the wisdom to separate the actor from the act. It is the ability to see that the person who hurt you is themselves trapped in a world of suffering. They are themselves burning in the flames of their own greed, their own hatred, and their own deep delusion. Their harmful action was not a sign of their strength, but a symptom of their own inner poverty, their own desperate unhappiness. Seeing this does not excuse their behavior, but it does free you from the prison of personal hatred. It shifts your perspective from that of a wounded victim to that of a wise physician observing a patient consumed by a fever. This is an act of immense power, for it reclaims your own inner peace from the hands of another. This compassionate state of mind can be actively cultivated through a formal practice known as metta, or loving-kindness meditation. This is the core technology for transforming the base metal of anger into the radiant gold of a boundless heart. The practice is systematic and beautiful. You begin, always, with yourself. You cannot offer water to others from an empty well. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. Find a quiet place and gently repeat phrases of well-wishing directed at your own being. May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and mind. May I be happy. May I live with ease. You may feel resistance, a sense that you don't deserve it. Your task is to simply notice that resistance and continue planting the seeds of kindness in the soil of your own heart. Once you have established a foundation of self-compassion, you expand the circle. You bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel effortless love and gratitude. You hold their image in your mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Feel the warmth of this genuine goodwill radiating from your heart. Next, you bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see regularly but have no strong feelings about. Like a person at the grocery store or a neighbor down the street, you offer them the same wishes. This practice begins to break down the artificial barriers of us and them, extending the circle of care beyond your personal tribe. Then comes the most transformative stage of the practice. You gently bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt you or with whom you have a conflict. This must be done with great care. The goal is not to force an artificial feeling of love, but simply to see if you can, for your own sake, include them in your wishes for well-being. May you be safe, may you be happy, may you be free from your own suffering. In doing this, you are not saying what they did was okay. You are saying, I will no longer carry the burning coal of hatred for you in my own heart. I release you for my own freedom. This is the ultimate act of self-love. Finally, you extend the phrases outward to encompass all living beings everywhere, in all directions, without exception, realizing that every being, just like you, wishes to be happy and free from suffering. The story of the Buddha and the angry man perfectly illustrates this principle in action. A man came to the Buddha and began to insult him with a torrent of abusive language. The Buddha listened silently and patiently until the man ran out of breath. He then asked him, "My friend, if you prepare a gift for someone and that person does not accept it, to whom does the gift then belong?" The angry man, surprised by the question, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly so. You have offered me a gift of your anger and your insults, but I do not accept them." The man was stunned into silence, realizing that his poison had never left his own hand. This is the freedom that compassion provides. It gives us the choice not to accept the gifts of anger that others try to hand us. We can let the burning coal remain with the one who picked it up. This is the alchemy. The raw, painful, low-frequency energy of anger and resentment is the lead. The practice of mindfulness is the container, allowing us to hold the energy without being consumed by it. The practice of loving kindness is the catalyst, the philosopher's stone that transforms the destructive energy into a force for healing and connection. We learn that anger does not need to be violently suppressed, but can be met with a spacious, tender, and intelligent heart. Its energy can be harnessed not for war, but for the fierce commitment to protect our own peace and to understand the suffering of all beings, including ourselves. By learning to meet greed with the wisdom of letting go and hatred with the alchemy of compassion, we have extinguished the two most visible and violent fires in our inner home. A great deal of smoke has cleared, and a palpable sense of peace begins to emerge. But a wise gardener knows that pulling up the weeds is not enough if the root system remains. A wise firefighter knows that putting out the flames is not enough if the smoldering embers that started the fire are still glowing in the dark. Why do these fires of greed and hatred ignite in the first place? What is the fundamental confusion that makes us believe that clinging will bring happiness and hating will bring peace? To find the ultimate source, we must go deeper. We must take our light of awareness and descend into the basement of the mind to confront the most subtle and powerful poison of all. We must face the fog of delusion. We have walked through the fires of the mind. With the light of mindfulness, we learn to stop feeding the consuming flames of greed, learning the gentle art of letting go. With the alchemy of an open heart, we learn to transform the corrosive heat of hatred into the healing balm of compassion. A great peace can begin to settle in this newfound space. But a wise physician does not just treat the symptoms. They seek to cure the disease at its source. Greed and hatred are but the fever and the chills. To find true and lasting wellness, we must address the virus that causes them. We must now take our light and descend into the basement of the mind to confront the third and most fundamental of the poisons. Moha, the subtle, pervasive fog of delusion. Delusion, or ignorance, is the taproot from which all suffering grows. It is the faulty wiring in the walls of our house that causes the fires to ignite again and again. It is not a lack of intelligence or a deficiency in factual knowledge. A person can have multiple PhDs and still be deeply deluded. In this context, delusion means a fundamental misperception of reality. It is a profound misunderstanding of how things truly are, a state of seeing the world through a distorted and clouded lens. It is because we are deluded that greed seems logical. We mistakenly believe that an external object can bring us lasting happiness. It is because we are deluded that hatred seems justified. We mistakenly believe that an external person is the ultimate source of our pain. Delusion is the foundational error that perpetuates the entire cycle of suffering. The antidote to this ignorance is not faith, nor is it emotion. The antidote is panna in Pali, or prajna in Sanskrit. The antidote is wisdom. This wisdom is not the accumulation of information. It is a direct, penetrating, and liberating seeing. It is the dispelling of the fog. The classic parable of the blind men and the elephant illustrates this perfectly. A king brings an elephant before a group of men who were born blind and asks them to describe it. One man touches the elephant's thick, sturdy leg and declares, "An elephant is like a pillar." Another touches the sharp, smooth tusk and proclaims, "No, an elephant is like a spear." A third feels the long, sweeping tail and argues, "You are both wrong. An elephant is like a rope." Another, holding the vast, flapping ear, insists, "An elephant is like a great fan." They soon fall into a bitter argument, each one absolutely convinced of their own partial truth. We, in our ordinary state of mind, are these blind men. We grasp one small piece of reality through our limited senses and conditioned thoughts, and then we construct an entire worldview based on that fragment, defending it as the absolute truth. Delusion is this state of confidently mistaking a small part for the whole. Wisdom is the process of gaining sight. What, then, does this wisdom see? When the fog of delusion begins to clear, it reveals the three fundamental characteristics of all existence, the tilakkhana, or the three marks of existence. These are not philosophical propositions to be debated, but universal truths to be observed directly in our own experience. The first mark is anicca, or impermanence. Everything, without exception, is in a state of constant change. The screen you are looking at is slowly decaying. The body you inhabit is different than it was a moment ago. Cells are dying. New cells are being born. Your thoughts, your emotions, your moods, they are like clouds passing in the sky, arising and ceasing in an endless, fluid dance. The mountains are slowly eroding, the stars are burning out. Nothing is static. The illusion of solidity is merely a trick of perception, like seeing the individual frames of a movie as a continuous picture. The reason this causes us so much pain is that we live in defiance of this truth. We desperately try to hold on to pleasant experiences, which, by their very nature, must change. We desperately try to push away unpleasant experiences, which also must change. We build our entire life strategy on the false hope of finding permanent footing on shifting sand. Deeply seeing and accepting the truth of impermanence is the first step in dismantling greed and aversion. You cannot cling to a river. The second mark of existence is dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. We have met this truth before as the starting point of our journey. Now we see it as a universal characteristic. Because everything is impermanent, anicca, and because we are deluded and cling to things as if they were permanent, there is an inherent quality of friction or unsatisfactoriness in all conditioned experience. To seek lasting, ultimate, and profound happiness in things that are by their nature fleeting and unreliable is a flawed project. It is like trying to quench a lifelong thirst with a single drop of dew. The pleasure is real, but it is brief and cannot satisfy the depth of our longing for true peace. This is not a pessimistic view, it is a pragmatic one. It simply states that if you are looking for permanent shelter, it is unwise to build your house in the path of a known avalanche. Seeing this truth clearly allows us to stop seeking ultimate refuge where it cannot be found and to turn our attention toward a more reliable source of well-being. The third mark of existence is the most profound, the most challenging to our ordinary way of thinking, and the most liberating. It is anatta, or not self. This teaching does not state that you do not exist. It states that you do not exist as a permanent, separate, independent, unchanging entity, a little I or soul that resides somewhere inside your body and mind. The self that we cherish, protect, and aggrandize is not a solid thing, but a dynamic process. It is a temporary coming together of ever-changing elements: physical form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Think of a river. You can give it a name, like the Mississippi, but there is no solid river thing. It is simply a continuous process of flowing water. In the same way, there is no solid you thing. There is just a continuous, interdependent process of thinking, feeling, and sensing. This insight is the ultimate antidote to the ego. When you see, through deep meditation, that there is no fixed, solid self to defend, the energy of hatred and aversion loses its primary target. When you see that there is no separate, lacking self to build up and satisfy, the energy of greed and clinging loses its fundamental purpose. It is the belief in a separate self that creates the us versus them mentality that fuels so much of our suffering. The wisdom of anatta reveals this separation to be an illusion. We are not a noun, we are a verb. We are not an isolated island, but a wave in a vast, interconnected ocean. It is vital to understand that this wisdom is not something you can acquire by simply reading a book or agreeing with these ideas intellectually. A person can be an expert on the chemical composition of water and still die of thirst. The map is not the territory. True, liberating wisdom is a fruit that grows on the tree of practice. It is the direct, experiential insight that arises when the mind becomes calm, clear, and concentrated through the sustained practice of mindfulness and meditation. It is the aha moment when you don't just think that a thought is impermanent, but you directly experience it arising and vanishing within your own awareness without leaving a trace. It is the moment you look for the thinker behind the thought and find only the thinking itself. This direct seeing is the sword that cuts the very root of delusion. When this wisdom dawns, the entire inner ecosystem changes. Seeing impermanence, we naturally begin to let go. Seeing the nature of dukkha, we cease looking for happiness in all the wrong places. Seeing not self, our hearts naturally open with compassion, realizing our shared nature with all beings. The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, deprived of the fuel of ignorance, die down into soft, glowing embers and then into nothing. The house of the mind is no longer a burning, smoke-filled trap. It becomes a clean, well-lighted space, a temple of peace. This profound seeing, this wisdom, is the ultimate antidote. But how does this inner reality, whether it is clouded by delusion or illuminated by wisdom, translate into the outer reality of our life experience? What is the universal mechanism that links our inner state to our outer world? This brings us to one of the most misunderstood and powerful laws of the cosmos, the true law of cause and effect. Having illuminated the inner world with the wisdom that dispels delusion, we arrive at a new understanding. We see that our state of mind, whether consumed by the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, or graced by the virtues of letting go, compassion, and clarity is the primary filter through which we experience life. This naturally leads to a crucial question. How does this inner state translate into our outer world? How does the quality of our consciousness actually shape the circumstances of our lives? This question brings us to a universal principle, a law as fundamental as gravity, which has often been simplified and misunderstood in the modern world. It is the true law of cause and effect, the profound and practical teaching on karma. In recent times, the concept of a law of attraction has gained immense popularity, suggesting that by focusing our thoughts on what we desire, we can attract those things into our lives. While this idea holds a kernel of truth that our focus does indeed shape our reality, its common interpretation often resembles a kind of cosmic shopping list. It can promote a subtle form of greed, encouraging us to see the universe as a catalog from which we can order wealth, fame, and perfect relationships through sheer force of will or high vibrations. The ancient wisdom of karma offers a far more nuanced, empowering, and psychologically sound understanding of how we co-create our reality. It reveals that you do not attract what you want. You experience the results of what you do. The word karma, or karma in the original Pali, literally means action. That is all. It is not fate, it is not destiny. It is not a system of reward and punishment meted out by some celestial judge. Karma is simply the universal law of action and consequence. It states that every volitional action performed through body, speech, or mind is a cause, a seed that, when conditions are right, will ripen into a corresponding effect, or fruit. The core of karma is cetana, or intention. It is the intention behind the action that gives it its moral weight and determines the nature of the fruit it will bear. An accidental act has very different consequences from an intentional one. This law is as impersonal and reliable as the law of agriculture. If you plant an acorn, you will not get a mango tree. If you plant a seed of kindness, you will not harvest a fruit of misery. Karma is created through 3 doors of action. The first and most important door is the mind. Every action begins here, in the silent world of our own thoughts and intentions. This is the seedbed of our reality. When we allow our minds to be a garden for thoughts of resentment, jealousy, and ill will, we are sowing karmic seeds of suffering, even if we never act on them externally. These thoughts poison our own inner world first, creating a low-frequency state of being that will inevitably color our perceptions and experiences. Conversely, when we consciously cultivate thoughts of loving kindness, gratitude, and forgiveness, we are sowing powerful seeds of happiness. We are creating the inner causes for a peaceful and harmonious life. The second door is speech. Our words are not empty vibrations, they are potent actions that create ripples in the world and in our own mind. When we engage in harsh speech, slander, gossip, or dishonesty, we are sowing seeds of division and pain. We create environments of distrust and conflict, and the fruit we will eventually harvest is one of isolation and bitterness. But when we practice right speaking words that are truthful, kind, beneficial, and timely, we sow seeds of trust, healing, and connection. We create a world around us that is safer and more harmonious, and we experience the fruit of being heard, respected, and valued. Every word we speak is a karmic choice. The third door is the body. These are our physical deeds, the most visible of our actions. When we act in ways that cause harm, stealing, violence, or sexual misconduct, we are planting potent seeds of fear and suffering, the fruits of which are inevitably pain, loss, and turmoil. When we use our bodies to perform acts of generosity, to offer help, to protect life, and to serve others, we are planting the most beautiful seeds of well-being. We create a world of safety and mutual support. And the harvest we reap is one of love, security, and deep fulfillment. To understand how this true law works, consider the parable of the two farmers. The first farmer is a practitioner of the superficial law of attraction. He sits on his porch every day, intensely visualizing a magnificent, bountiful harvest. He creates vision boards of perfect vegetables, he chants affirmations of abundance, he does his best to vibrate at the frequency of a successful farmer, but he never plows the field. He never tests the soil. He never plants a single seed or pulls a single weed. His field remains barren, and he grows bitter, believing the universe has failed him. The second farmer is a student of karma. She understands that a harvest is not a magical manifestation, but the natural result of skillful action. She does not merely visualize, she gets to work. She carefully prepares the soil, purifies her mind of negativity. She selects the healthiest, most viable seeds, forms wholesome, skillful intentions. She plants them with care at the right time, acts with mindfulness and wisdom. She diligently waters them, nurtures her positive habits, and protects them from pests and weeds, guards her mind from the three poisons. She works in harmony with the laws of nature. For this farmer, the bountiful harvest is not a surprise. It is the natural, predictable, and well-earned consequence of her accumulated actions. Our life is this field. Our mind is the soil. Our intentions and actions are the seeds. You are the farmer. You do not attract your life. You grow it, seed by seed, moment by moment. Your frequency is not a signal you send out. It is the quality of the seeds you are planting right now. A life of consistent generosity, kindness, and wisdom is a high-frequency life, and it will naturally yield a harvest of peace and well-being. A life of consistent greed, anger, and delusion is a low-frequency life, and it will just as naturally yield a harvest of stress and sorrow. This understanding of karma is the opposite of fatalism. It is the ultimate message of empowerment. While the conditions of our present moment are indeed shaped by the harvest of our past actions, the present moment itself is always an open field. The past has created the now, but what you do in the now creates the future. At every single moment, you are standing at the head of the row with a bag of seeds, and you have a choice. You can continue to unconsciously sow the same old seeds of habitual reactivity, anger, fear, craving, and ensure a future harvest that looks much like the past. Or you can, with mindfulness and wisdom, choose to plant a new seed. You can choose to meet an insult with patience instead of rage. You can choose to meet a craving with observation instead of indulgence. You can choose to meet an opportunity to help with generosity instead of indifference. Each of these choices is a powerful karmic act that changes the trajectory of your future. You are not a prisoner of your past karma. You are the creator of your future karma, starting now. If our life is the field and our intentional actions are the seeds, a wise farmer must ask, which seeds yield the most abundant and nourishing harvest? Which actions are most potent in creating a life of genuine wealth and well-being? The ancient teachings are unequivocal on this point. One of the most powerful seeds we can sow to directly counteract the poison of the scarcity mindset and cultivate a reality of true abundance is the seed of generosity. This leads us to explore one of the most beautiful, practical, and frequency-raising arts of all, the sublime practice of giving. Having understood that our life is the harvest grown from the seeds of our own intentional actions, the path of wisdom becomes clear. If we wish to live in a world of abundance, peace, and connection, we must actively sow the seeds that bear such fruit. While many practices contribute to this inner cultivation, there is one that stands out as a direct and powerful antidote to the poison of greed and the mindset of scarcity. It is the sublime practice of dana, the art and grace of generosity. In a world that constantly tells us to accumulate, to acquire, to hoard, the teaching of dana presents a beautiful paradox. The fastest way to feel truly wealthy is not by getting, but by giving. At its core, generosity is a profound psychological and spiritual technology. Its power lies in its ability to directly rewire the deep-seated conditioning of the ego. The ego, by its very nature, operates from a perceived sense of lack. It is the voice that whispers, "There is not enough, I need more. I must protect what is mine." This is the low-frequency hum of scarcity that keeps us in a state of anxiety and striving. The act of giving is a direct contradiction to this voice. When you give something away freely, whether it is your time, your money, or your attention, you are making a powerful, embodied statement. You are declaring, through your actions, "I have enough. I have more than enough. I have enough to share." This single act cuts at the very root of the poverty mindset. It is an affirmation of abundance that is far more potent than any mere visualization or verbal repetition. Because it is real, it is a karmic seed of sufficiency planted in the field of your life. The practice of dana is traditionally understood to have three primary forms, making it accessible to every single person, regardless of their material circumstances. The first, and most commonly understood, is the giving of material things, or amisa dana. This includes giving food, money, clothing, or any physical object. What is most important in this form of giving is not the size of the gift, but the quality of the intention behind it. A small coin given with a heart full of compassion and genuine goodwill is a far more powerful karmic seed than a large donation given for the sake of public recognition or to ease a guilty conscience. You can practice this every day. It can be as simple as buying a cup of coffee for the person behind you in line, leaving a generous tip for someone in the service industry, or donating books you have already read. Each small act of material generosity is a vote you cast for a world of abundance and a direct deposit into your own inner account of well-being. The second form of giving is deeper and, in many ways, more powerful. It is the giving of fearlessness, or abhaya dana. This is the gift of safety, security, and peace. You practice this when you offer a calm, non-judgmental, listening ear to a friend who is in distress. You practice it when you protect an animal from harm or care for the natural environment. You practice it when you use your words to stand up for someone who is being treated unjustly. In a family or a workplace, you give the gift of fearlessness by creating an atmosphere of psychological safety where people feel secure enough to be vulnerable and to speak their truth without fear of ridicule or retribution. Every time you choose a calm response over a reactive one, you are giving the gift of fearlessness to those around you. You are contributing to the peace of the world by embodying it, offering a sanctuary of stability in a chaotic world. The third and highest form of giving is the giving of the Dharma, or Dhammadana. This means the sharing of wisdom, truth, and the path that leads to the end of suffering. This does not mean you must become a preacher or aggressively push your beliefs onto others. The spirit of Dhammadana is far more subtle and humble. You practice it when you share helpful, practical advice that you have learned through your own experience with someone who is asking for guidance. You practice it when you teach a skill to another person, empowering them in their own life. You practice it when you share an article, a book, or a piece of wisdom that has genuinely helped you on your path. Most powerfully, you practice this form of giving simply by living your own life with integrity, mindfulness, and compassion. Your own peace, your own quiet joy, becomes a silent teaching, an inspiration to others that a different way of being is possible. This gift is considered the highest because while material things and even safety are temporary, the gift of wisdom can lead a person to their own permanent liberation. The principle of generosity can be understood through the parable of the river and the stagnant pond. A stagnant pond, like the Dead Sea, is a body of water that only receives. Rivers flow into it, but it has no outlet. It only takes, it never gives. As a result of this hoarding, the water becomes increasingly salty, toxic, and devoid of oxygen. No fish can survive in it. No trees can grow on its banks. It becomes a dead zone. This is a perfect metaphor for the mind trapped in greed. It obsessively pulls resources toward itself. It hoards, it clings, and in doing so, it creates a toxic, lifeless inner environment where no joy or real peace can flourish. Now consider a flowing river. A river is a master of dana. It is constantly receiving water from the mountains, the rain, the streams, but it is also in a constant state of giving. It gives its water freely to the thirsty animals, to the roots of the great trees, to the farmers' fields, and ultimately, it gives its entire being back to the vast ocean. Because of this continuous, dynamic flow of both receiving and giving, the river is always fresh, vibrant, and teeming with life. It is a source of nourishment and well-being for the entire ecosystem through which it passes. Your life, your consciousness, can be a stagnant pond or a flowing river. When you hoard, you stagnate. When you give, you enter the sacred flow. You become a channel for abundance to move through you, not just to you. This is the secret of a truly wealthy mind. It is not about the amount that is in the reservoir. It is about the capacity for flow. The joy that arises from a pure act of giving is one of the highest and purest frequencies a human being can experience. There is a deep, wholesome happiness that comes from contributing to the well-being of another. This joy, this pity, is its own reward. It is the immediate fruit of a skillfully planted seed. When you give with a pure heart, not expecting thanks, not seeking recognition, but simply from a place of connection and goodwill, you experience an expansive, uplifting state of mind. You are, in that moment, living in a state of true wealth. You are demonstrating to yourself and to the universe that you are a source, not a sink. This beautiful practice of sowing seeds of abundance by opening our hand teaches us how to create a reality of sufficiency and connection. It is the active outward expression of a generous heart. But there is another, complementary practice that helps us to recognize the wealth that is already here, all around us, in every moment. What if we could learn not only to give freely, but also to rejoice freely in the success, happiness, and good fortune of others? This moves us beyond simply overcoming our own sense of scarcity to actively celebrating the abundance of the entire world. This is the sublime practice of appreciative joy. Through the practice of generosity, we learn the profound truth that giving, not getting, is the pathway to feeling truly wealthy. Dana is the art of opening our hand. Now, we turn to a complementary practice, one that teaches us how to open our heart. It addresses one of the most subtle and corrosive poisons of the mind, a feeling that can curdle our peace even in the absence of any direct misfortune. This is the poison of envy, and its powerful, liberating antidote is the practice of mudita, or appreciative joy. It is the capacity to feel genuine, selfless happiness in the good fortune, success, and well-being of others. It is the frequency of celebration. Let us first examine the nature of envy. It is that familiar, bitter tightening in the chest we feel when we hear of a friend's promotion, a neighbor's new car, or a colleague's public recognition. It is a painful emotion, a mixture of desire, resentment, and a sense of personal lack. Envy is a direct symptom of the delusion of scarcity. It operates on the false, deeply ingrained belief that life is a zero-sum game. It sees happiness, success, and abundance as a finite pie. If someone else takes a large slice, there is necessarily less left for us. This belief, when unexamined, traps us in a state of constant, exhausting comparison. It turns the world into a vast arena of rivals. Every other person's success becomes a subtle threat, a reminder of our own perceived inadequacy. This is a profoundly low-frequency state of being. It is a mind contracted in on itself, isolated in a prison of its own making, unable to connect with the world in a joyful and open way. Mudita is the key that unlocks this prison. It is the radical recognition that joy is not a finite resource to be hoarded. Joy is infinite. Happiness is not a pie with a limited number of slices. It is a fire that grows brighter the more it is shared. Appreciative joy is the conscious choice to celebrate the good fortune of others as if it were our own. It is the ability to hear of another's success and feel an expansive warmth in our own heart, a genuine feeling of how wonderful for them. I am so happy that they are happy. This is not a forced politeness. It is a deep and transformative shift in perspective. It is the understanding that another person's light does not diminish our own in any way. The perfect metaphor for mudita is the flame of a candle. Imagine you are in a dark room, holding a single lit candle. This candle represents your own happiness and well-being. Now, another person enters the room with an unlit candle. If you reach over and use your flame to light their candle, what happens to your own? Does your flame become smaller? Does your light diminish? Number. Your flame remains exactly as bright as it was before. But now, the total amount of light in the room has doubled. If you then light 10 more candles and 100 more, your own flame is not depleted in the slightest. Yet the entire room is now flooded with brilliant, warm light. Joy works in exactly the same way. When you share in another's happiness, you lose nothing of your own. You simply multiply the total amount of joy present in the world and, most importantly, you allow yourself to feel it. The practice of mudita has profound benefits. The most immediate is a sense of immense personal relief. It allows you to lay down the impossibly heavy burden of comparison. The energy that was once wasted on monitoring others, on feeling resentful, on nursing a sense of injustice, is now liberated. This energy can be used for your own growth, your own creativity, your own peace. It transforms your relationships. People who were once perceived as competitors now become sources of inspiration. Their success becomes evidence that happiness and achievement are possible, which can fuel your own journey. Friendships deepen when they are based on mutual celebration rather than subtle rivalry. But perhaps the greatest benefit is how it changes the very texture of your daily experience. If you can only feel happy when good things happen to you, your opportunities for happiness are, by definition, limited. They are scarce. You must wait for your own specific circumstances to align perfectly. But if you can train your heart to feel happy when good things happen to anyone, the stranger who gets good news on a phone call, the child laughing in the park, the team that wins a game, the artist who creates a beautiful work, then your opportunities for happiness become virtually limitless. You begin to see evidence of success, joy, and abundance everywhere you look. Your mind is no longer scanning the world for threats and evidence of your own lack. Instead, it is bathed in the high-frequency state of celebration. You are no longer waiting for your single candle to be the brightest. You are enjoying the light of a million flames. Like all virtuous qualities of the mind, mudita can be intentionally cultivated. The practice begins, as always, with mindfulness. First, you must become aware of the arising of envy, its opposite. When you feel that familiar pang, do not judge yourself or try to crush the feeling. Simply acknowledge it with clarity. This is the feeling of envy. It is a painful contraction in my chest. It arises from the mistaken belief in scarcity. See it as a visiting cloud, not as the sky itself. By observing it with non-judgmental awareness, you rob it of its power. Then you can consciously pivot to the practice of mudita. Start with someone close to you, for whom it is easy to feel happy. Bring to mind a friend or family member and a recent success or joy they have experienced. Perhaps they got a new job, recovered from an illness, or simply had a wonderful day. Picture them, feel their happiness, and silently repeat phrases like, "I am so happy for you. May your happiness and good fortune continue. May your joy increase." Allow yourself to feel the genuine warmth that arises in your own heart. Then, you can make this an active practice in your daily life. When a colleague shares good news, make a conscious choice to offer a sincere and heartfelt congratulations. Look them in the eye and let them feel your genuine happiness for their success. Notice the shift inside you, from the tight knot of envy to the open-hearted expansion of joy. As you become more skilled, you can extend this practice even to people you don't know, celebrating the anonymous joys you witness throughout your day. Generosity, dana, is the practice of creating abundance by opening our hand to give. Appreciative joy, mudita, is the practice of recognizing abundance by opening our heart to celebrate. Together, they are powerful antidotes to the contracted, impoverished state of the ego. They fill our lives with a sense of connection, richness, and celebration, tuning our consciousness to a frequency of expansive well-being. These beautiful practices teach us how to relate skillfully to the positive side of life's ledger, to our own abundance and the abundance of others. But reality is a dance of polarities. For every success, there is a failure. For every moment of pleasure, there is a moment of pain. For every gain, there is a loss. How do we remain stable and peaceful when the winds of fortune change, when we are faced with our own suffering or the suffering of others? How do we hold both the joy and the sorrow of the world with an unshakable heart, without being swept away by either? This question leads us to the crown jewel of the enlightened emotions, the quality that balances all others, the practice of profound balance and unshakable peace. We have learned to open our hands through the practice of generosity. We have learned to open our hearts to the world's joy through the practice of mudita. These are the beautiful, expansive energies that connect us to the world. But life, in its infinite complexity, is not always a story of success and celebration. It is a tapestry woven with threads of light and shadow, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. How do we stay upright and open-hearted when the inevitable storms of life arrive? How do we hold both the world's beauty and its sorrow without being shattered? This requires the cultivation of the fourth and crowning sublime state, the quality that holds all others in perfect balance. This is the practice of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the secret to unshakable peace. Equanimity is perhaps the most misunderstood of all the virtuous states of mind. From the outside, it can look like indifference, detachment, or a kind of cold, aloof withdrawal. But this is its counterfeit. Indifference is a state of not caring, rooted in fear or delusion. It is a turning away from life. True equanimity is its opposite. It is not a turning away, but a turning toward life with profound courage, trust, and wisdom. It is the capacity to be fully present with all of life's changing tides without being swept away by them. It is not a lack of feeling. It is a spaciousness of heart that is so vast, it can hold every feeling without being destabilized. If loving kindness and compassion are the warmth of the sun, equanimity is the vast, deep blue sky in which the sun shines. The sky does not cling to the sun, nor does it fear the storm clouds. It allows all weather to pass through it, remaining unchanged in its fundamental nature. The practical function of equanimity is to provide us with a stable center in the face of what are known as the 8 worldly winds. These are the 8 conditions of life that constantly blow upon us, pushing and pulling our minds in every direction. They come in 4 pairs of opposites: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. A mind without equanimity is like a small boat at the mercy of these winds. When the wind of praise blows, we are puffed up with pride. When the wind of blame blows, we are deflated with shame. When the wind of gain fills our sails, we are giddy with excitement. When the wind of loss rips through, we are capsized by despair. We live in a state of constant reactivity, our inner peace entirely dependent on the direction of the external wind. To cultivate equanimity is to build a deep, heavy keel for our boat. The winds will still blow, that is the nature of the sea of life, but we are no longer tossed about helplessly. We can navigate the storms with grace and skill, holding a steady course. The most powerful metaphor for equanimity is that of a great mountain. Imagine a vast, ancient mountain, its peak reaching into the clouds, its base rooted deep within the earth. The mountain endures all seasons, all weather. In the spring, gentle breezes caress its slopes. In the summer, the hot sun beats down upon its rock face. In the autumn, fierce gales howl through its passes. In the winter, it is covered in heavy snow and ice. The mountain does not become arrogant in the pleasant sunshine, nor does it fall into despair during the violent blizzard. It does not cling to the gentle breezes or push away the bitter cold. It simply allows all the weather to happen. It is so vast, so stable, so deeply grounded in its own being that the temporary, passing conditions on its surface cannot shake its core. This is the mind of upekkha. It is a mind that has found a stability and a refuge within itself that is no longer dependent on the ever-changing weather of external circumstances. Equanimity is also the great balancer of the other sublime states, preventing them from becoming distorted by attachment. Without the wisdom of equanimity, loving kindness, metta, can curdle into selfish grasping and grief when the object of our love experiences pain or leaves us. Without equanimity, compassion, karuna, can lead to burnout, despair, or what is called idiot compassion, the enabling of harmful behavior out of a misguided desire to alleviate immediate suffering. Without equanimity, appreciative joy, mudita, can become a kind of manic, giddy excitement attached to the high of celebration and disappointed when it fades. Equanimity is the spacious, wise container that holds all these radiant emotions. It is the loving heart of a wise grandparent who cares deeply for their grandchildren, celebrates their joys, and soothes their hurts, but does not have their own happiness destroyed by the children's every stumble. It is a love that is vast, unconditional, and free. How, then, do we cultivate this mountainous stability? The practice often begins with a contemplation on the law of karma. We reflect that all beings, including ourselves, are the owners of their actions and the heirs of their results. We cannot control their choices, nor can we ultimately shield them from the consequences of those choices. This understanding helps us to let go of our arrogant and exhausting attempt to be the controller of the universe. We can wish all beings well. We can act with compassion when we can, but we must also respect their journey. A traditional meditation phrase for this is, all beings are the owners of their karma. Their happiness and their suffering depend on their own actions, not on my wishes for them. This is not an abdication of responsibility. It is an embrace of a humble and realistic love. In our daily lives, we can practice by bringing a gentle, mindful awareness to the constant flow of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings that arise with every experience. When you taste something delicious, instead of immediately clinging and wanting more, can you simply note pleasant feeling? When you feel aches and pains in your body, instead of resisting, can you simply note unpleasant feeling? This practice of noting without reacting builds the mental muscle of non-attachment. Most profoundly, equanimity is the natural fruit of a deep experiential insight into impermanence. Anicca, when you see, not just intellectually but in the very fabric of your moment-to-moment experience, that everything arises and passes away, your compulsive need to grasp and to push away naturally subsides. You learn to hold life's experiences more lightly. This state of profound balance is arguably the highest and most stable frequency one can achieve. While states of joy, bliss, and rapture are wonderful, they are still conditioned, they are still subject to change. Equanimity is the bedrock that lies beneath them all. It is the deep, silent peace of the mountain's core. This is the unshakable home within ourselves that we can always return to, no matter how fiercely the 8 worldly winds may blow. True peace, we discover, is not the absence of the storm. It is the stillness of the mind in the heart of the storm. This profound, mountainous stability of equanimity is the ultimate refuge, the final safe harbor for the heart. But building such a mountain can feel like a grand, long-term project. Is there a simple, daily practice that can help us to lay its foundation? A practice that simultaneously waters the seeds of generosity, joy, and balance all at once? Indeed, there is. It begins not with a grand gesture, but with a simple, quiet shift in attention. It is the transformative act of noticing the good that is already and always present. It is the humble and powerful practice of gratitude. We have explored the sublime heights of equanimity, that unshakable, mountainous peace that is the ultimate refuge for the heart. It is the vast sky that can hold all weather, but to build such a mountain can feel like a daunting task. We may wonder, is there a simpler path? A more accessible trailhead from which we can begin this journey from the lowlands of anxiety to the highlands of peace? There is. It is a practice so simple it is often dismissed, yet so powerful it can fundamentally change the entire landscape of our inner world. It is the practice of gratitude. Gratitude is the master key that shifts our entire operating system from a default mode of scarcity to a chosen reality of abundance. It is the most direct and reliable way to synchronize our personal frequency with the frequency of well-being. To understand why this simple practice is so transformative, we must first understand a peculiar feature of our own minds. Our brains, for sound evolutionary reasons, come with a built-in negativity bias. For our ancient ancestors roaming the savannah, survival depended on being hyper-vigilant to threat. The one who spent their time admiring a beautiful flower but failed to notice the rustling in the grass was less likely to pass on their genes than the one who was constantly scanning for predators, food shortages, and social conflicts. As a result, our brains evolved to be like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. A single criticism can stick with us for a week, while a dozen compliments slide right off. This ancient survival mechanism in our modern world of relative safety has become a primary driver of our anxiety and dissatisfaction. Our default mode is to scan our lives for what is wrong, what is missing, what could be a problem. We are professional fault finders. This is the very definition of a mind tuned to the frequency of lack. Gratitude is the conscious and deliberate training to counteract this default programming. It is a form of mental resistance training, a workout for the heart and mind. By intentionally and repeatedly directing our attention to what we are thankful for, we begin to carve new neural pathways in the brain. We are literally rewiring our minds to notice the good. At first, this can feel artificial, like an exercise we have to force ourselves to do. But with consistency, just like exercising a muscle, it becomes stronger, easier, and more natural. Eventually, the mind begins to spontaneously notice the good just as it once spontaneously noticed the bad. You are actively changing your brain's hardware, tuning your own receiver to pick up a clearer, more joyful signal. The practice of gratitude invites us to expand our definition of what is worthy of thanks. We can begin with the obvious, being grateful for our loved ones, for our friends, for having a roof over our heads and food to eat. This is a beautiful and important start, but the practice deepens when we move to the overlooked, to what could be called the miracle of the non-tragedy. Can you feel a sense of profound gratitude for the simple fact that your heart is beating without any conscious effort from you? For the air that fills your lungs, freely and abundantly? For the clean water that flows from your tap? for the fact that your body is, for the most part, functioning, allowing you to walk, to see, to hear. We live our lives surrounded by an ocean of miracles that we take completely for granted. Gratitude is the act of waking up to this astonishing good fortune that is already ours. The most advanced stage of the practice is to cultivate gratitude even for our difficulties. This is not a form of masochism, but one of profound wisdom. We can learn to be grateful for our challenges because they are our greatest teachers. The difficult person in our life is a master teacher of patience and compassion. A painful failure is a humbling teacher of impermanence and non-attachment. A health scare is a powerful teacher of the preciousness of life. When we can genuinely say thank you to a difficulty, not for the pain it caused, but for the lesson it taught and the strength it forged within us, we have reached a state of incredible freedom. We are no longer a victim of our circumstances, but an active student of life, able to find value and meaning in every experience. There is a powerful story that illustrates this choice of perception. Two people were gravely ill, sharing a room in a hospital. One was situated next to the room's only window. The other was next to a blank wall. Each day, the person by the window would spend hours describing in vivid detail all the wonderful things he could see outside. He described the children playing in the park, the young lovers walking hand in hand, the beautiful colors of the changing seasons, the drama of the clouds in the sky. The person by the wall lived for these daily descriptions, which filled his world with life and beauty. One day, the person by the window passed away. After a respectful time, the person by the wall eagerly asked if he could be moved to the window bed. The nurses obliged, and he propped himself up, excited to finally see the glorious park for himself. He looked out the window and was stunned to find that it faced nothing but a stark, blank brick wall. His friend, out of a spirit of pure generosity and a heart full of gratitude, had created that entire beautiful world from his own mind. This story presents us with the fundamental choice we face in every moment. We can spend our lives staring at the blank brick wall of our problems, our complaints, our resentments, and our perceived scarcities. Or we can choose to look through the window of gratitude to focus on the immense beauty, connection, and good fortune that is always available to us, if only we have the eyes to see it. The world does not change, our perception of it does. One of the most simple and effective ways to install this new perception is through the daily practice of keeping a gratitude journal. The instruction is simple. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to write down 3 to 5 specific things for which you are genuinely grateful. The key here is specificity. Don't just write, "I'm grateful for my family." Write, "I am grateful for the way my child hugged me when I came home from work today and how it made my whole body relax." Don't just write, "I'm grateful for my lunch." Write, "I am grateful for the surprising sweetness of the tomato in my salad and for the hands that grew it, transported it, and prepared it." This specificity forces your brain to relive the positive experience, to feel the emotion associated with it, which is what strengthens those neural pathways. This simple 5-minute practice, done consistently, has been shown to have a more significant impact on a person's long-term happiness than winning the lottery. It is the single most effective tool for shifting your baseline frequency from lack to sufficiency. This simple practice of gratitude is a master key. It unlocks the door to a reality where we are already rich, already blessed, already whole. It tunes our inner frequency to one of sufficiency and grace. But how do we maintain this frequency amidst the demands and pressures of the place where we spend most of our waking hours, our work? How can the very way we earn a living become not a source of stress and depletion, but a powerful expression of our highest values and a source of high-frequency energy? This crucial question brings us to the profound and practical wisdom of right livelihood. The practice of gratitude retunes our inner world, allowing us to perceive the profound abundance that is already present in our lives. It is a fundamental shift in our state of being. But for this inner richness to be stable, it must be supported by our actions in the outer world. We spend a vast portion of our waking hours engaged in work, in our livelihood. For many, this domain is the primary source of stress, depletion, and a feeling of meaninglessness. It becomes a low-frequency activity that we endure simply to acquire the means to feel better during the few hours we have left. This schism between our inner life and our work life is a major source of the static that disrupts our peace. The ancient wisdom of the Buddha addresses this directly, not as a side note, but as an essential component of a truly awakened life. It is the principle of samma ajiva, or right livelihood. Right livelihood is one of the pillars of the Noble Eightfold Path, the practical roadmap to liberation. It asserts that the way we earn our living is not separate from our spiritual practice. It is a part of our spiritual practice. At its most basic level, it provides an ethical foundation, guiding us to avoid work that causes harm to ourselves or to other living beings. Traditionally, this included abstaining from dealing in weapons, in poisons, in intoxicants, or in the trading of human or animal life for the purpose of harm. In our modern context, we can expand this to mean any work that is fundamentally based on exploitation, deception, the degradation of the environment, or the promotion of addiction and mindless consumption. To engage in such work, no matter how lucrative, is to sow karmic seeds of suffering for oneself and for the world. It is to consciously participate in lowering the collective frequency. But the wisdom of right livelihood goes far deeper than simply avoiding harmful professions. Its more profound and personal application lies not just in what we do, but in how we do it. It is about bringing our highest value soul mindfulness, our integrity, our compassion, our desire to serve into the work we perform each day. This is where we find the power to transform a mundane job into a meaningful calling, to alchemize a source of stress into a source of high-frequency purpose. The famous parable of the three stonecutters illustrates this transformation perfectly. A traveler journeying through a great city came upon a construction site where several men were cutting large blocks of stone. The work was arduous, performed under the hot sun. The traveler approached the first stonecutter, a man whose face was etched with resentment and fatigue. "What are you doing?" the traveler asked. The man scowled and replied, "What does it look like I'm doing? I am hacking away at this cursed, heavy stone. My back aches, the dust fills my lungs, and the pay is meager. I am serving my sentence until the day is done." This man's work was a low-frequency chore, a source of misery and complaint. His consciousness was trapped in the drudgery of the task itself. The traveler moved on to the second stonecutter. This man worked with a steady, rhythmic pace, his expression neutral. "And you, what are you doing?" the traveler asked. The man paused, wiped the sweat from his brow, and said, "I am a stonecutter. I am earning a living to feed my wife and children. I am building a wall." This man's work had a practical purpose. His frequency was one of duty and responsibility. He had connected his labor to a tangible, personal goal. Finally, the traveler approached the third stonecutter. This man worked with a similar effort, yet there was a light in his eyes. His movements seemed less like a struggle and more like a dance. "And what is it that you are doing?" the traveler asked. The man looked up, his face breaking into a radiant smile. He gestured toward the vast, rising structure behind them and said with reverence, "I am building a great cathedral. I am building a house of beauty and peace that will stand for 1,000 years, a place where generations of people will come to find solace and inspiration." The physical task of all three men was identical. They were all cutting stone, but their inner experience, their frequency, their reality was worlds apart. The first man had a job, the second had a career, the third had a calling. This parable reveals the essential secret of right livelihood. The meaning of our work is not inherent in the task itself. It is determined by the intention and the view we bring to it. You have the power to be the third stonecutter, no matter what your job description says. You can infuse your work with purpose by consciously reframing it as a practice. You can practice mindfulness by bringing your full, undivided attention to the task at hand. When you write an email, just write the email with clarity and care. When you are in a meeting, just listen with an open and receptive mind. This simple act of being present dissolves the stress that comes from a mind that is always somewhere else. You can practice compassion by seeing your colleagues, clients, or customers not as objects, obstacles, or means to an end, but as fellow human beings, each with their own hopes, fears, and struggles. How can your work, in some small way, alleviate their suffering? A doctor does this by healing the body. A teacher does this by dispelling ignorance. But a janitor also does this by creating a clean, safe, and healthy environment. A barista does this by offering a moment of warmth and comfort in a cup. A person who codes software does this by creating a tool that solves a problem and makes someone's life easier. When you connect your daily tasks to the intention of service, your work is no longer about you. It is about your contribution to the interconnected whole. This shift in perspective forces us to reevaluate our cultural definition of wealth and success. We are taught to admire the person with the high-paying job, the fancy title, and the corner office. Yet, if that job requires them to compromise their integrity, if it fills their minds with constant stress and anxiety, if it disconnects them from their families and their own hearts, and if it contributes to harm in the world, is that person truly wealthy? From the perspective of right livelihood, they are suffering from a profound form of poverty. They have traded their inner gold, their peace, their time, their health, their purpose for a pile of outer currency. This is a foolish bargain that tunes their entire life to a low frequency of depletion and discontent. True wealth is holistic. It is a life rich in time, rich in meaning, rich in positive relationships, and rich in inner peace. A livelihood that systematically destroys these things is, by definition, a wrong livelihood, regardless of the salary it provides. To align your life with right livelihood is to engage in a courageous inquiry. It is to ask yourself, does my work cause harm? Does it align with my deepest values? Does it allow me to be of service? Can I bring mindfulness and compassion into my daily tasks? Answering these questions honestly may lead to difficult choices. It may mean changing jobs, or it may mean radically changing the way you approach the job you already have. It is the sacred work of bridging the gap between who you are and what you do, creating a life of integrity and wholeness. When our work becomes infused with this kind of meaning and purpose, a fascinating thing happens. The frantic, desperate need for more money, more status, and more material possessions, as a compensation for a meaningless life, begins to fade. We find a deep satisfaction in the work itself. We realize that the true reward is not the paycheck, but the person we become through the practice of our work. This insight naturally leads us to discover a counterintuitive and deeply liberating secret of a high-frequency life, the profound and elegant richness that can be found not in having more, but in needing less. It is the discovery of the wealth of simplicity. Having discovered the profound meaning that comes from aligning our work with our deepest values, we begin to notice a natural shift in our priorities. When our livelihood itself becomes a source of purpose and satisfaction, the compulsive need for external rewards and material distractions starts to wither away. We are no longer working a job we dislike to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't know. This awakening leads us directly to a powerful, countercultural, and deeply liberating truth. The greatest wealth is not found in accumulation, but in simplicity. This is the discovery that in order to have more, you often need to own less. Our modern world is built upon a great and seductive deception. The promise that happiness is available for purchase. We are relentlessly bombarded with messages telling us that the next acquisition, the newer car, the faster phone, the more fashionable clothes will be the thing that finally fills the void, that quiets our restless hearts. We buy into this promise, and in doing so, we encumber our lives in ways we rarely stop to consider. The things we own end up owning us. They own our future income through debt. They own our time and energy through the constant need for cleaning, organizing, storing, and maintaining them. And most significantly, they own our peace of mind. Every possession is another thing to worry about, another thing that can be broken, stolen, or lost. It is another anchor that attaches us to the turbulent worldly winds of gain and loss. The pursuit of material wealth, which promises freedom, often delivers a gilded cage of anxiety and obligation. The path of simplicity, sometimes called minimalism, is not about deprivation or embracing a life of grim austerity. It is not a competition to see who can own the fewest things. It is about a radical shift from unconscious consumption to conscious, intentional living. It is the art of curating your life. It involves holding up every object, every subscription, every commitment, and asking a simple, powerful question. Does this truly add value to my life? Does this support my purpose and my well-being? Or does it subtly drain my time, my energy, and my peace? Simplicity is the practice of having the courage to let go of everything that does not answer with a clear yes. It is the intentional elimination of the non-essential. There is a timeless story that beautifully illustrates the paradox at the heart of our complex lives. A wealthy industrialist from a bustling city went on vacation to a small coastal village. One afternoon, he came across a local fisherman, relaxing happily beside his small boat, playing with his children, his day's work already done. The industrialist, a man accustomed to maximizing efficiency, was disturbed by this. He approached the fisherman and said, "Why aren't you out there fishing longer? You could catch so many more fish." The fisherman smiled and asked, And what would I do with them? The businessman, excited to share his expertise, replied, "You could sell them and buy a bigger boat. With a bigger boat, you could go into deeper waters, catch even more fish, and hire a crew. Soon, you could have a whole fleet of boats, build your own cannery, control the distribution, and issue an IPO." The fisherman's smile never faded. "And then what would I do?" he asked. The industrialist puffed out his chest. "Then you would be a millionaire. You could retire, move to a quiet little coastal village, and spend your days relaxing, playing with your children, and fishing just enough for your family." The fisherman looked at his children playing in the sand, then back at the bewildered businessman, and said gently, "But sir, I am already doing that." This story reveals the profound delusion under which many of us operate. We spend the best years of our lives sacrificing our health, our time, and our peace in a frantic pursuit of a state of being that is already available to us in this very moment. If only we had the wisdom to simplify our needs. We are the businessman, so busy building an empire that we forget the simple joy the empire was supposed to provide. Simplicity is the wisdom of the fisherman. It is the realization that true wealth is not about the capacity to acquire more, but the freedom that comes from needing less. This principle extends beyond the physical. There is a direct and undeniable link between our outer environment and our inner state. A cluttered home, a desk piled high with papers, a digital life filled with endless notifications and unread emails. This outer chaos creates and reflects an inner chaos. The constant visual noise of our surroundings subtly drains our mental energy and makes it difficult for the mind to settle. The act of decluttering our physical space is a powerful form of mindfulness, a meditation in action. As you sort through your possessions, letting go of what is no longer needed, you are also sorting through your own mind. You are letting go of the past, of old identities tied to those objects, of the mental baggage they carry. Creating outer order brings an immediate and palpable sense of inner clarity, spaciousness, and calm. You are creating an environment that supports a high-frequency state of mind. This leads us to a new, more empowering definition of wealth. The old definition equates wealth with the abundance of money and possessions. The new definition, the definition of simplicity, equates wealth with the abundance of time, energy, and freedom. When you simplify your needs, you are no longer a slave to a demanding job just for the paycheck. You may be able to work less, or work in a field that is more aligned with your values, even if it pays less. This gift of time is the most precious commodity on earth. It is time you can invest in your relationships, in your health, in learning, in silence, in your spiritual practice. When your life is not cluttered with the endless task of managing things, your mind is freed. You have more mental bandwidth for creativity, for problem solving, for being present with your loved ones. This freedom from debt, freedom from worry, freedom from the tyranny of the non-essentialis, the ultimate luxury. It is the lived experience of a high-frequency life. To embrace simplicity is to make a conscious choice for depth over breadth. Instead of having 100 acquaintances, you cultivate a few deep friendships. Instead of owning 1,000 books you'll never read, you cherish and reread a few that have transformed you. Instead of chasing a dozen fleeting pleasures, you find profound satisfaction in simple, repeatable joys. A walk in nature, a shared meal, a quiet moment of reflection. It is a path of quiet rebellion against the noisy demands of a culture that is never satisfied. By simplifying our physical lives, by intentionally removing the clutter from our homes and schedules, we create an outer world that mirrors and supports a peaceful inner world. We reclaim our most valuable resources, our time, our attention, and our mental energy. But as we clear away this external clutter, our heightened awareness may reveal another, more subtle kind of clutter that constantly disrupts our inner peace and lowers our frequency. It is the clutter of our own words. The things we say, the way we say them, and the things we neglect to say all have a profound power to create our reality. This leads us to examine one of the most practical and immediate ways to cultivate a high-frequency life, the simple yet transformative art of right speech. Having decluttered our outer world through the wisdom of simplicity, creating a physical environment that supports peace, we now turn our attention to another form of clutter, one that is far more pervasive and powerful. It is the clutter of our speech. We live our lives bathed in a sea of words our own and others. We often treat them as if they are cheap and disposable, spilling them carelessly into the world without a thought for their consequence. But the wisdom traditions teach that words are anything but cheap. They are potent acts of creation and destruction. Every word you speak is a karmic seed that shapes your reality. Your speech has the power to build worlds of harmony, trust, and connection, or to create worlds of conflict, fear, and isolation. To consciously choose the former is the practice of samavaka, or right speech. It is one of the most immediate and practical ways to raise your own frequency and the frequency of everyone you interact with. To understand what right speech is, it is first helpful to understand what it is not. The Buddha described 4 types of speech to be abandoned. The first is lying, or speaking what is not true. A lie, no matter how small, introduces a poison into our own mind and into our relationships. It creates a stressful inner world where we must constantly keep track of our falsehoods, and it erodes the very foundation of all healthy connection, which is trust. A commitment to truthfulness is the first step toward a life of integrity and inner peace. The second type of wrong speech is divisive speech, or slander. This is the act of using words to set one person against another. It is the poison of gossip, of speaking ill of someone behind their back, of carrying tales from one person to another to create discord. This kind of speech arises from a mind of ill will and jealousy, and its fruit is always bitter. It creates an environment of suspicion and conflict, and ultimately isolates the speaker, who becomes known as an untrustworthy source of negativity. The third form is harsh speech. This includes insults, curses, verbal abuse, and any words spoken with the heat of anger. As we have learned, anger is a hot coal that burns the one who holds it. When we use harsh speech, we are throwing that coal at another, but not before it has seared our own mind with its toxic, low-frequency energy. Harsh speech never persuades, it only wounds. It closes hearts and creates enemies, making any form of peaceful resolution impossible. The fourth type of wrong speech is perhaps the most common and seemingly harmless: idle chatter. This is frivolous, aimless, pointless talk that fills the air but contains no substance. While it may not seem as destructive as the other forms, idle chatter is a significant drain on our mental energy. It clutters the mind with trivialities, prevents us from enjoying the peace of meaningful silence, and often serves as a way to avoid genuine connection. It is the verbal equivalent of junk food. It provides a fleeting sensation but offers no real nourishment. In place of these 4 unskillful forms, the practice of right speech offers a positive framework, a simple yet profound filter through which to pass our words before we speak them. It consists of 4 beautiful criteria. Before you speak, you can ask yourself, first, is it true? This is the foundational gate of integrity. Second, is it beneficial? A statement may be true, but it may not be helpful or useful to say it. Will speaking this word bring benefit to anyone? Will it lead to a positive outcome or simply cause unnecessary pain? If it is not beneficial, it is better left unsaid, even if it is true. Third, is it the right time? This is the gate of wisdom and sensitivity. A piece of constructive criticism, for example, might be true and beneficial, but if it is delivered when the other person is angry, tired, or defensive, it will not be heard. It will only create more conflict. A wise person knows not only what to say, but when to say it. And fourth, and most importantly, is it spoken with a mind of kindness? This is the gate of intention. What is the motivation behind my desire to speak? Am I speaking to truly help, to connect, to heal, to clarify, to inspire? Or am I speaking from a place of ego, to prove I am right, to win an argument, to show off my knowledge, or to subtly put someone down? The energy behind our words is often more important than the words themselves. There is a powerful old story that illustrates the immense power and irreversibility of our words. A man in a village carelessly spread a false and damaging rumor about one of the town elders. As the days went by, he saw the pain his rumor was causing and was overcome with guilt. He went to the elder to offer his deepest apologies. The wise elder listened patiently and said, "I can see your remorse is genuine, and I forgive you. But you must first perform a task. I want you to take a feather pillow to the top of the highest hill in the region, cut it open, and shake all the feathers out into the wind." The man, though puzzled, agreed. He did as he was told and returned to the elder. "I have done it," he said. The elder then replied, "Now, for the final part of your task, go back and gather every single feather and put it back in the pillow." The man was aghast. "But that's impossible," he cried. The wind has carried them for miles to every corner of the valley. I could never find them all. The elder looked at him with sad, knowing eyes and said, "Exactly. And so it is with your words. They have been carried on the winds of gossip to the ears of everyone in this valley and beyond. You can no more take them back than you can gather those feathers." This story teaches us the profound responsibility we carry every time we open our mouth. Our words are like feathers released into the wind. Once spoken, we lose all control over them. They can travel to places we never intended and cause damage we never foresaw. Every time we speak, we are choosing to release something into the world. Is it a feather of kindness, a feather of truth, a feather of healing, or is it a feather of malice, a feather of falsehood, a feather of division? We can think of our words as either medicine or weapons. A word of encouragement at the right time can be a life-saving medicine for a person in despair. A gentle word of apology can be a medicine that heals a wounded relationship. A word of truth spoken with compassion can be a medicine that dispels confusion. Conversely, a sharp, critical word can be a weapon that pierces another's heart. A sarcastic remark can be a weapon that belittles and demeans. A lie can be a weapon that destroys trust. Before you speak, ask yourself, am I reaching for medicine or am I reaching for a weapon? One of the most effective ways to cultivate the skill of right speech is to embrace the practice of noble silence. This is not an awkward, empty silence, but a rich, intentional silence. It is the conscious choice to refrain from speaking in order to create a space for deeper listening, listening to others, and listening to ourselves. You can practice noble silence by simply taking a mindful pause before you answer in a conversation. In that brief pause, you can check your intention and choose your words wisely. You can practice it by turning off the radio or podcast in the car and simply being present with the journey. In this quiet, you begin to notice the mind's own restless chatter, its compulsive urge to comment and judge. Seeing this impulse is the first step to taming it. When you practice noble silence, you begin to appreciate the true value of words. They become more precious. And when you do choose to speak, your words carry more weight, more meaning, and more power to heal. By simplifying our physical lives and purifying our speech, we clear away much of the external and internal clutter that disturbs our peace. We create a life that is more harmonious, more honest, and more intentional. Yet sometimes, even within this newfound clarity, we may feel the persistent pull of a low-frequency state, a deep-seated anxiety, a recurring sadness, or a reactive anger whose source seems mysterious. Often, these states are not simple reactions to the present moment, but are, in fact, echoes of the past. They are the subtle vibrations of old, unhealed wounds from our history. To find the deepest level of unshakable peace, we must have the courage to gently turn our awareness inward and attend to these ghosts of our past. This brings us to the tender, courageous, and essential work of healing the inner child. As we clear the clutter from our lives through simplicity and purify our interactions through right speech, we create a pristine inner and outer environment. We have tended to the present moment with great care, yet, for many of us, even in this newfound clarity, a persistent static remains. We might experience a recurring anxiety that has no obvious cause, a deep-seated sadness that lingers like a low-lying fog, or a flash of reactive anger that feels far bigger than the situation that triggered it. These are the moments when we realize we are not just reacting to the now, we are reacting to echoes of the past. To find the deepest and most enduring peace, we must have the courage to turn inward and attend to these old, unhealed wounds. This is the tender and essential work of healing the inner child. Within each of us, regardless of our age, there exists a part of our consciousness that is still a child. This is the part that holds our earliest experiences, our most vulnerable feelings, and our most fundamental beliefs about ourselves and the world. A child's mind is like wet cement. The impressions made upon it set hard and form the foundation for the rest of the structure. If our early environment was one of safety, love, and acceptance, we form core beliefs like, I am worthy, the world is a safe place, my needs are valid. But if our early experiences included moments of fear, neglect, criticism, or feeling unseen, we can form very different core beliefs. I am not good enough. I must be perfect to be loved. I am a burden. The world is dangerous. These beliefs, often formed before we even had words for them, become the invisible operating system running in the background of our adult lives. They are the source code for our self-sabotaging behaviors, our relationship patterns, and our persistent low-frequency states. The long-term effect of these early wounds can be understood through the parable of the scarred tree. Imagine a young sapling in a forest, flexible and full of life. One day, a passing animal tears a deep gash in its tender bark. The sapling, being resilient, does not die. It continues to grow, but over the years, as it matures into a mighty tree, its entire trunk begins to twist and contort around that original wound. The powerful adult tree, decades later, still has its shape dictated by a trauma it received when it was small and vulnerable. Its gnarled form is a testament to its effort to protect that initial injury. In the same way, our adult personalities, our defense mechanisms, our character armor are often built around the unhealed wounds of our childhood. The adult who is a relentless perfectionist may be protecting a child who felt they were never good enough. The adult who avoids intimacy may be protecting a child who learned that connection leads to pain. We are still twisting ourselves to protect a pain from long ago. Healing this pain requires a reversal of our lifelong habit of running away from it. Instead of suppressing, ignoring, or distracting ourselves from these uncomfortable feelings, we must learn to turn toward them with the skills we have been cultivating. Mindfulness and compassion. The first step is to recognize when these old wounds are being activated. When you have an emotional reaction that feels disproportionately large for the current situation, it is a powerful clue that an echo from the past has been triggered. In that moment, you can pause. Instead of getting lost in the drama, you can bring a gentle curiosity to the feeling itself. You can ask, how old is this feeling of shame? How old is this terror of abandonment? Often, you will find that the feeling belongs not to the capable adult you are today, but to a small, frightened child within. The next step is to offer this wounded part of yourself the very thing it never received. You can practice this as a gentle meditation. Visualize your present-day adult self, full of the wisdom and strength you now possess, going to that small child within. See them in the moment of their original pain, and instead of judging them or telling them to get over it, you offer them your compassionate presence. You can visualize kneeling down, holding them, and speaking to them with the kindness they always deserve. You can say, I see you. I hear how scared you are. I am so sorry you had to go through that alone. You did nothing wrong. You are safe now. I am here, and I will not leave you. This is not just a psychological trick. It is a profound act of metta, of loving kindness, directed at the parts of yourself that need it most. You are reparenting yourself with the love and acceptance that may have been missing. From this place of safety, you can begin to listen. You can ask that child part of you, what do you need? What have you been trying to tell me all these years? You listen not to analyze, but to validate. You allow the old grief, the old anger, the old fear to finally be felt and expressed in the safe container of your adult awareness. This is how the trapped, low-frequency energy of the past is finally allowed to move and be released. A central part of this healing process is the practice of forgiveness. This is often deeply misunderstood. Forgiving someone who has hurt you is not about condoning their actions. It is not about forgetting what happened or even necessarily reconciling with them. Forgiveness is a profound act of self-love. It is the decision to stop carrying the heavy, toxic burden of resentment and hatred in your own heart. It is canceling a debt you were forcing someone else to pay, a debt they were never going to acknowledge. It is the choice to put down the hot coal, not for their sake, but for yours, so that your hand may finally heal. Equally important, and often more difficult, is the practice of forgiving ourselves. We must forgive ourselves for the mistakes we made when we were operating from our woundedness. We must forgive ourselves for not knowing then what we know now. We must offer ourselves the same unconditional grace we would offer a dear friend who has stumbled. The goal of this tender work is not to erase the past. That is impossible. The scar on the tree remains. The goal is to change our relationship with the past. We are aiming for integration, not amputation. When a wound is healed, the memory of it no longer has the power to control our present-day behavior. It is no longer an active, painful trigger. Instead, it becomes a part of our story that has been integrated with wisdom and compassion. The scar becomes a source of our strength, a testament to our resilience, and a foundation for a deeper empathy for the suffering of others. The tree, though scarred, can now grow straight and true towards the sun, no longer contorted by the pain of its past. This gentle work of healing our past wounds is perhaps the deepest form of inner decluttering. It releases the old, trapped, low-frequency energies that may have been dictating our lives for decades. It requires immense courage to face the pain, immense compassion to hold it, and a stable, clear mind to navigate the process without becoming overwhelmed. While mindfulness gives us the initial light to see these wounds, to truly heal them, and to gain unshakable insight into the deep structures of our minds, we may need a more powerful and focused tool. We may need to go beyond simply observing the turbulent surface of the mind to calming its very depths and illuminating its hidden corners. This brings us to the profound and transformative practice of deep meditation. Having journeyed inward to gently heal the wounds of the past, we arrive at a place of greater inner wholeness. We have used our mindfulness to illuminate the dark corners of our history and our compassion to soothe the echoes of old pain. But to achieve a truly unshakable peace, to transform our frequency at the deepest possible level, we need to go beyond simply observing our mental states. We need a method to both calm the agitated waters of the mind and to develop the penetrating clarity that can see to the very bottom of the lake. This is the role of formal meditation. If mindfulness is the flashlight we carry, meditation is the dedicated practice of upgrading that flashlight to a powerful, high-intensity searchlight and learning to use it with surgical precision. It is important to distinguish between mindfulness and meditation, as they are often used interchangeably. Mindfulness, as we have explored, is the faculty of present moment awareness without judgment. It is a quality you can bring to any activity, washing the dishes, walking, listening to a friend. Meditation is the formal training ground, where we systematically cultivate and strengthen that faculty. Mindfulness is like having good eyesight. Meditation is the practice of regularly cleaning your glasses and performing eye exercises to make that vision sharper, clearer, and more reliable. It is the dedicated time we set aside to work with our minds in a focused and structured way. The classical path of meditation involves the development of two essential qualities, like the two wings of a bird. Both are necessary for flight. The first wing is samatha, which translates to calm, tranquility, or concentration. The second wing is vipassana, which means insight or clear seeing. The entire practice can be understood through the beautiful analogy of a lake. Our ordinary mind is like a lake whipped into a frenzy by the winds of daily life. The water is choppy and full of mud churned up from the bottom. In this state, the water cannot reflect the sky clearly, and it's impossible to see what lies on the lakebed. The practice of samatha is the process of calming the winds. The practice of vipassana is the act of looking into the now stilled water to see its depths with perfect clarity. The training in samatha, or concentration meditation, is designed to tame what is often called the monkey mind, the restless, distracted, and chaotic state that most of us live in. The primary technique is to train the mind to rest upon a single object of meditation, most commonly the physical sensation of the breath, anapanasati. The instruction is simple and direct. You place your attention on the feeling of the breath at the tip of the nostrils or on the rise and fall of the abdomen. The mind, like an untrained puppy, will constantly wander away, pulled by thoughts, sounds, and memories. The practice is not to prevent this wandering, but to notice it as soon as it happens, and then, with immense patience and gentleness, to guide the mind back to the breath. Every time you do this, notice the wandering and gently return. You are performing a mental push-up. You are strengthening the muscle of concentration. You are taming the monkey. Over time, with consistent practice, the mind begins to settle. The periods of distraction become shorter, and the periods of focused attention grow longer. The internal chatter subsides. The result of this is the arising of profound states of inner peace, joy, piti, and even bliss, sukha. The lake becomes calm, still, and clear. This is not the ultimate goal of the path, but it is a vital and necessary stage. A calm, concentrated mind is a happy mind, but more importantly, it is a powerful and workable mind. It is like sharpening a surgeon's scalpel before performing a delicate operation, or tuning a guitar before playing a beautiful piece of music. Samatha practice makes our mind a fit instrument for the real work of liberation. With this now calm, clear, and sharpened instrument, we can turn to the practice of vipassana, or insight meditation. The goal of vipassana is not just to feel calm, but to see reality as it truly is. It is the practice of wisdom. With the stabilized mind, we systematically turn our attention to the nature of our own experience. We observe the ever-changing flow of our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations, not getting lost in their content, but examining their fundamental characteristics. We watch a thought arise in the mind, we see it exist for a moment, and we watch it vanish. We feel an itch on our arm, and instead of scratching, we observe the pure sensation of itching as it intensifies, changes, and eventually disappears. Through this sustained, microscopic observation of our own lived reality, we begin to have direct, experiential insights into the three marks of existence. We don't just think that everything is impermanent, anicca. We see it directly, moment after moment, as every sensation and thought dissolves as soon as it arises. We don't just believe in the concept of not self, anatta. We look for the I who is thinking, the I who is feeling, and we cannot find a solid, separate entity. We find only the impersonal processes of thinking and feeling themselves. This is not a philosophy. It is a direct perception. It is this direct seeing, this panna, that cuts the root of delusion. When you see for yourself that there is no permanent self to defend and aggrandize, the fires of greed and hatred lose their fuel and begin to burn out naturally. It is crucial to understand that meditation is not an escape from the world. It is the exact opposite. It is a courageous training to be able to engage with the world more fully, more effectively, and more compassionately. It is the warrior's practice of sharpening their sword in private so they can act with skill and precision on the battlefield of life. It is the musician retiring to their room to practice scales so they can join the orchestra and contribute to a symphony of harmony. Through meditation, we fill our own cup so that we may have something to offer a thirsty world. We charge our own battery so that our light may shine more brightly for the benefit of others. As we go deeper into this silent, internal exploration, a remarkable shift begins to occur. As the noisy chatter of our own ego quiets down, we begin to perceive a deeper reality. Our heightened sensitivity, born from stillness, starts to notice the intricate and profound web of connection that links our own existence to the existence of everything else. We begin to see that our sense of being a separate, isolated self is a profound illusion, and that this illusion is the source of our deepest anxieties. This dawning awareness leads us from the internal world of psychology to the vast, interconnected reality described by the principle of interbeing. Through the disciplined and gentle practice of meditation, we quiet the turbulent surface of the mind and develop the capacity to see into its depths. We begin to dismantle our illusions piece by piece, seeing for ourselves the transient and impersonal nature of our thoughts and feelings. This process of inner clarification inevitably leads to the most profound and liberating discovery of all, an insight that cuts the very taproot of suffering. It is the realization of anatta, or not self, which blossoms into the lived understanding of what the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh has beautifully termed interbeing. This is the key that unlocks the final door of perception, revealing that the feeling of being a separate, isolated self is the most fundamental illusion of all. For our entire lives, we have operated under a silent, unquestioned assumption. We feel that we are an I inside this body, looking out at a world of others and things. There is me in here, and there is the rest of the universe out there. This perceived separation is the source of all our fear, for the separate self feels vulnerable and threatened. It is the source of all our greed, for the separate self feels lacking and needs to acquire things to feel more real. It is the source of all our hatred, for the separate self defines itself by what it is not, creating conflict with the other. The wisdom of interbeing systematically deconstructs this illusion, not as a philosophy, but as a directly observable reality. Let us practice this seeing right now with a simple sheet of paper. If I were to ask you what this is, you would say it is a piece of paper. But the insight of interbeing invites us to look more deeply. If we look at this paper, we can see a cloud floating in it. This is not poetry, it is a scientific reality. Without a cloud, there is no rain. Without the rain, the tree cannot grow, and without the tree, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of the paper. If you remove the cloud from the paper can no longer exist. Looking more deeply, we can see the sunshine. The sunshine is also in the paper. The tree needed the sun's light for photosynthesis, the process that creates cellulose. So the sunshine is also the paper. And if we look further, we see the logger who cut the tree down. We see his hands, his breath, and his life. And in the logger, we see his parents, and the food he ate for breakfast, which was perhaps bread. And in the bread, we see the wheat, the field, the farmer, the rain, and the sun that grew the wheat. The minerals from the earth that nourished the tree are in the paper. The gasoline in the logger's chainsaw is in the paper. The consciousness that invented paper is in the paper. If we continue this way, we will see that everything in the entire cosmos is present in this single sheet of paper. It contains everything, except for one thing, a separate, independent existence. The paper is empty of a separate self. It can only be by interbeing with everything else. To be is to interbe. This is not just true for the paper, it is true for you. Look at your own hand. What do you see? You see your parents and their parents, and all your ancestors stretching back through time. Their life is flowing in your veins. You see the food you ate this morning, the carrot, the rice, the water. And in that food, you see the sun, the earth, the clouds, and the farmers. All these things are now your flesh and blood. You are breathing in the air, a gift of the trees and the microscopic plankton in the ocean. You are breathing out the carbon dioxide that nourishes those very plants. You are engaged in a constant, intimate, and inseparable exchange with the entire world. The thoughts you think are not entirely your thoughts. They have come from the books you have read, the conversations you have had, the culture you have absorbed. If you were to remove all these non-new elements, your ancestors, the sun, the air, the food, the water, the world of ideas, what would be left of you? Nothing at all. Just like the sheet of paper, you are empty of a separate self, but you are full of the entire universe. This is the profound truth of interbeing. It is not a belief to be adopted, but a reality to be directly experienced in the quiet of a mindful and concentrated mind. The moment this insight begins to dawn, the entire foundation of our suffering starts to crumble. The poison of envy, for example, is predicated on the idea that another person's success is separate from our own. But in the light of interbeing, their success is our success. We are cells in the same body. When one part of the body is healthy and thriving, it contributes to the well-being of the whole. Their joy is not a threat. It is a contribution to the collective well-being of which you are a part. Competition becomes a meaningless concept. How can your right hand be in competition with your left? Harming another person or the planet is revealed to be an act of profound ignorance, like a hand unknowingly cutting itself. Compassion, karuna, is no longer a virtuous quality we must struggle to cultivate. It becomes the natural, spontaneous, and only logical response to reality. When we see another suffering, we no longer see a separate other. We see a part of our own larger self that is in pain. Their suffering is our suffering, and the desire to alleviate it arises as naturally as the desire to pull our own hand from a fire. Responsibility also takes on a new meaning. It is no longer a heavy burden, but a joyful expression of our connection. We realize that our every thought, word, and deed sends ripples through this intricate web of life. Our personal frequency is not personal at all. It is our constant broadcast to the cosmos, our contribution to the collective consciousness. We feel a natural urge to care for the earth, for our communities, and for each other, not out of a sense of moral duty, but out of a deep and abiding love for our very own self, which is the entire world. This understanding completely transforms our concept of wealth. The idea of accumulating vast personal wealth while the environment is degraded and communities suffer becomes an absurdity. It is like a liver deciding to hoard all the body's nutrients for itself, causing the heart and lungs to fail. A very wealthy liver in a dying body is not wealthy at all. True wealth, seen through the lens of interbeing, is the well-being of the entire system. My health depends on the health of the air, the water, the soil, and my community. Therefore, my true wealth is our commonwealth. The goal of life shifts from personal accumulation to collective contribution. This is the ultimate high frequency, the frequency of unity consciousness. It is the realization that we are not separate droplets, but the entire ocean. Living from this realization is the culmination of the path. It requires us to constantly bring this insight into our daily activities, to see the sun and clouds in our food as we eat, to feel our connection to the trees as we breathe, to see the shared humanity in the eyes of others as we interact. This profound realization of interbeing is the ultimate shift in consciousness, the final antidote to the poison of delusion. It dissolves the root of all fear and separation. But to live from this place of profound connection, to maintain this high frequency in a world that constantly bombards us with messages of individualism, separation, and competition, requires a specific kind of inner strength. It requires the ability to trust in a process that is slow and organic, to hold steady when our old habits of separation re-emerge, and to wait for the seeds of our wholesome actions to ripen in their own time. This brings us to a quiet but essential virtue for the long journey, the great and steadying power of patience. Having journeyed to the profound realization of interbeing, we see with clarity that our lives are woven into the fabric of the entire cosmos. We understand that our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of all. This insight is the ultimate source of peace. Yet, to embody this truth in a world that operates on the illusion of separation is the work of a lifetime. The seeds of wisdom we plant do not sprout overnight. The deep-seated habits of the ego do not vanish in a single flash of insight. The journey of transformation requires one final, essential, and often overlooked virtue. It is the quiet, steady, and immensely powerful quality of kshanti, or patience. In a culture that worships speed and demands instant gratification, patience is not a weakness, it is a superpower. It is the fertile ground in which all other virtues can mature and bear fruit. Impatience, its opposite, is a subtle form of violence. It is a manifestation of aversion, the second poison. It is the painful feeling that arises when reality is not unfolding according to our personal, ego-driven timeline. At its root, impatience is a form of arrogance. It is the belief that we know better than the natural, intricate unfolding of causes and conditions. This inner resistance to what is creates a state of constant, low-grade stress and agitation. It is the frenetic, low-frequency energy of "are we there yet?" which prevents us from ever being truly where we are. Patience is the antidote. It is the calm, wise acceptance of the present moment, coupled with a deep trust in the process of life. It is not passive waiting, it is an active, engaged, and peaceful presence. The practice of patience unfolds in three primary arenas. The first, and arguably the most crucial, is patience with ourselves. As we walk this path, we will stumble. The old habits of the mind, the inner critic, the flash of anger, the pull of a familiar craving will inevitably resurface. In these moments, the impatient mind reacts with harsh self-judgment. I should be over this by now. I have failed again. This inner critic is a cruel and ineffective teacher. The patient mind, however, meets these moments with a vast and tender compassion. It recognizes the old pattern with a gentle, knowing smile. Ah, this old friend has come to visit again. It is okay. I see you. It is the difference between yelling at a child who has fallen off their bicycle and gently helping them up, dusting them off, and encouraging them to try again. Patience with ourselves is the understanding that healing is not a linear process. There will be progress and there will be setbacks. True growth requires the grace to allow for both. The second arena is patience with others. Just as we must be patient with our own slow unfolding, we must be patient with the journeys of those around us. Other people will not always meet our expectations. They will act from their own conditioning, their own fears, and their own unhealed wounds. The impatient mind demands that others change to suit our needs, leading to frustration, conflict, and broken relationships. The patient mind, grounded in the wisdom of karma and interbeing, understands that every person is on their own path, ripening at their own pace. We cannot force a flower to bloom by tearing at its petals. We can only provide the right conditions, the sunlight of our kindness, the water of our compassion, and allow them the space to grow in their own time. This kind of patience dissolves conflict and becomes a source of great peace in our relationships. We cease to be a judge and instead become a safe harbor. The third arena is patience with the process of life itself. This is patience with the ripening of karma. We have been learning to diligently plant wholesome seeds in the field of our life seeds, of generosity, kindness, clarity, and wisdom. But seeds take time to germinate. A wise farmer does not plant a seed in the morning and then return in the afternoon, digging it up frantically to see if it has sprouted. This would only destroy the potential for growth. The farmer trusts the process. They know that with the right conditions, the seed will grow in its own natural time. In the same way, we must trust that our skillful actions will bear fruit. We may not see the results immediately. We may practice for weeks, months, or even years with little apparent change. This requires a deep faith and trust in the law of cause and effect, a letting go of the ego's need for constant validation and immediate results. The parable of the Chinese bamboo tree is a perfect illustration of this principle. When the seed of this remarkable tree is planted, it must be watered and nurtured every day. For the entire first year, nothing appears above the ground. The second year, the farmer continues to water and care for the soil, and still, there is no visible growth. The third and fourth years pass in the same way. An impatient person would have long given up, concluding that the seed was dead or that their efforts were useless. But the wise farmer continues, knowing that something profound and invisible is happening. Beneath the surface, the bamboo is building a vast and incredibly complex network of roots, establishing a foundation strong enough to support its future growth. Then, in the 5th year, a miracle seems to occur. The bamboo shoot finally breaks through the soil, and it grows with an almost unbelievable speed, shooting up to heights of 80 or 90 feet in just a few short weeks. But was this sudden growth a result of only those few weeks? Of course not. It was the result of 5 years of patient, faithful, and often unrewarded cultivation. Its spectacular outer growth was made possible only by its long period of unseen inner development. Our spiritual practice is exactly like this. The long periods of daily meditation, of practicing kindness when it's difficult, of watching our thoughts when we feel we are making no progress, these are our root-building years. We are establishing the foundation. We are building the inner strength and stability that is unseen by the world. The moments of sudden insight, the breakthroughs in compassion, the tangible shifts in our state of being, these are the bamboo shoots that emerge when our root system is finally ready. Patience is the wisdom that allows us to keep watering the ground, trusting in the unseen growth, even when there is no external evidence of progress. This long-term perspective is a hallmark of a truly wealthy mind. The mind of scarcity is impatient. It needs a quick return on its investment because it feels it is running out of time. The mind of abundance, the mind that is secure in its own nature, can afford to wait. It knows that all good things take time to mature. It is not rattled by temporary droughts or storms because it is focused on the long, inevitable arc of the harvest. This inner stability, this trust in the process, is a form of profound wealth. This quiet, steady power of patience allows our inner transformation to unfold organically, not as a frantic, forced project, but as the natural, graceful growth of a well-tended garden. It allows us to harmonize ourselves with the deep, natural rhythms of life, rather than constantly struggling against them. And as we practice generosity, compassion, wisdom, and patience, we find that all of these virtues have a common direction. They all serve to train our attention, to pull it back from the regrets of the past and the anxieties of the future, and to place it firmly in the only time that life ever truly exists. This brings us to the culmination of our journey, the art and the power of living in the now. We have come to the culmination of our long journey inward. We began by examining the frantic, endless chase for happiness, the illusion that peace could be found somewhere in the future. We then turned our awareness around, exploring the inner world of the mind. We identified the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion that cloud our perception and lower our frequency. We learned the antidotes, the arts of letting go, of compassion, and of wisdom. We tended to our inner garden by cultivating generosity, joy, patience, and simplicity. We purified our speech and began to heal the wounds of our past. We sharpened our minds through the practice of meditation, and we awakened to the profound truth of our interconnectedness with all of life. All of these practices, all of these insights, have been leading us to a single, luminous, and inescapable point. They have been training us to arrive fully in the only time that life ever truly exists. The final destination of our entire journey is not a future state of enlightenment, but the radical and liberating act of living in the now. The greatest source of human suffering is our mind's incredible ability to leave the present moment. We live our lives trapped in what is called psychological time. Our bodies are here, but our minds are almost always somewhere else. We are either living in the past, or we are living in the future. The past exists only as a memory, a collection of ghosts in the mind. When we dwell there, we are often trapped in cycles of regret, resentment, guilt, and grievance. We replay old conversations, we lament past mistakes, we cling to former glories. To live in the past is to be haunted, to bind ourselves to that which no longer exists. This is a primary cause of depression. The future, on the other hand, exists only as a projection, a fantasy, a phantom created by the mind. When we live in the future, we are trapped in a world of anxiety, worry, planning, and restless striving. We are constantly leaning forward into the next moment, believing that then things will be better, that then we will finally be able to relax and be happy. This constant projection robs the present moment of all its vitality and joy. It turns the now into nothing more than a means to an end, a stepping stone to a future that never arrives in the way we imagine it. This is the source of all anxiety. Peace is found only when we withdraw our energy from the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future and allow our consciousness to come to rest fully in the here and now. This is the simple and profound truth of our existence. life is only ever happening in this moment. Your entire life is nothing but a continuous series of now moments. The past was once a now, and the future, if and when it arrives, will also be experienced as a now. There is no escape from it. To miss the now is to miss your life. All the practices we have explored are, in essence, different methods for training ourselves to return to this one precious reality. Mindfulness is the direct tool that notices when the mind has wandered into the past or future and gently escorts it back to the anchor of the breath. Letting go is the practice of releasing our attachment to future outcomes so that we can be at peace with the present reality. Compassion is what gives us the strength to stay present even when the now is filled with pain. Equanimity is the unshakable stability that allows us to remain in the now, regardless of whether its contents are pleasant or unpleasant. They are all paths leading home to this very moment. There is a story of a man who spent his whole life on a quest to find paradise. He heard it was a mythical land of perfect peace and happiness, and he became obsessed with reaching it. He gave up his home, his family, and all his comforts to embark on the arduous journey. He crossed scorching deserts, his mind fixed on the cool waters of paradise. He climbed treacherous, snow-capped mountains, his body aching, but his spirit driven by the thought of the warm, peaceful valleys of paradise. He sailed across vast, stormy oceans, enduring the hardships only as a necessary price to reach his final destination. He was so focused on the goal that the journey itself was just an obstacle to be overcome. Finally, as a very old and weary man, he arrived at a shimmering gate. The gatekeeper, a being of immense peace, greeted him. "I have made it," the old man said, his voice trembling with a lifetime of effort. "I have spent my entire life searching. I am here to enter paradise." The gatekeeper looked at him with eyes full of a gentle, profound sadness. "You are welcome here, of course," the gatekeeper said softly. "But you do understand, don't you, that paradise is not a place you arrive at. It was the path you walked every day to get here. It was in the taste of cool water in the desert. It was in the breathtaking view from the mountain peak. It was in the feeling of the salty spray of the ocean on your face. You were living in paradise your entire life, but you were too busy looking for it to notice." This poignant story reveals the central tragedy of a life lived for the future. We are all on a journey, and we are all already in paradise, if only we had the awareness to see it. The sacredness of life is not hidden in some future achievement. It is woven into the very fabric of our ordinary, present moment experience. The ultimate high frequency is not a state of ecstatic bliss that we must strive for. It is the simple, quiet, and profound frequency of full presence. It is the ability to bring your entire being to the experience of drinking a cup of Tieto, feel the warmth of the mug in your hands, to see the steam rising, to smell the fragrant aroma, to taste each sip as if it were the first and only cup of tea in the universe. In that moment of full presence, the past and future disappear. There is no anxiety, no regret. There is only the simple, rich, and complete reality of the tea. In that moment, your mind is in perfect synchrony with life. This is the true meaning of wealth. It is not about having extraordinary experiences, but about bringing an extraordinary quality of attention to our ordinary experiences. The richness of your life is not measured by what you do, but by how present you are for what you do. Can you be fully present for a conversation with a loved one without thinking about what you will say next? Can you be fully present for the act of washing the dishes, feeling the warmth of the water and the smoothness of the plates? Can you be fully present for a single, conscious breath? To the extent that you can, you are living a truly rich and abundant life. We began this journey feeling like Alex, trapped on a treadmill, forever chasing a future happiness that never arrived. We have traveled through the inner landscapes of the mind, identifying the poisons that cloud it and cultivating the virtues that clear it. We have learned to practice generosity, compassion, patience, and simplicity. And we find that all these paths, all these practices, all this wisdom converges on this single luminous point. To be fully here, now, is to step off the treadmill. It is to be in perfect harmony with the flow of life itself. This is the ultimate high frequency. This is the peace that was always here, waiting patiently for us to come home. We began this journey together in a place that is familiar to so many, in the quiet hum of a late-night office, under the glow of a screen that never sleeps, or in the silent scrolling through lives that seem so much more complete than our own. We began with an ache, a subtle but persistent feeling that something was amiss, that we were running a race without a finish line. We gave this feeling its ancient name, dukkha, not as a sentence of doom, but as a courageous and honest diagnosis. From that starting point, we walked a path illuminated by a wisdom 25 centuries old. We dared to look directly at the restless nature of our own minds, not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a wild horse to be gently tamed. We explored the profound truth of impermanence, learning that our resistance to the natural flow of change is the very source of our struggle. We questioned the most fundamental assumption of all, the solid, separate self, and found instead a beautiful, interconnected dance of processes, a self that is more like a river than a statue. This was not a journey into theory. It was a journey of uncovering practical, timeless tools. We saw the Four Noble Truths not as a dogma, but as a doctor's compassionate prescription. We walked the steps of the Eightfold Path, a blueprint for a life of wisdom, integrity, and profound mental stillness. We discovered the anchor of our own breath through mindfulness, a way to come home to the present moment, the only place where life truly exists. We learned to cultivate compassion, starting with ourselves, and to touch the world with a heart that understands rather than a mind that judges. And now, as we reach the end of this shared time, what is the ultimate message to carry forward? It is this: peace is not a destination you must travel to. It is not a prize to be won after a long and arduous battle. It is not the absence of noise, of difficulty, of loss, or of pain. Peace is the shelter you build inside your own heart. It is the quiet, unwavering space of awareness that can hold the storm of life without being broken by it. The world will always present challenges. The waves will always rise and fall. But you do not have to be the small boat tossed helplessly by the sea. You can become the sea itself, vast, deep, and unshakable. You do not need to become a monk or retreat to a distant mountain. The monastery is your own mind. The temple is your own body. The tools are already in your possession. Your breath is your anchor. Your awareness is your guide. Your capacity for kindness is your greatest strength. The journey is not over, because the journey is life itself. But now you walk it with a new map and a new light. Each mindful breath, each moment of choosing a kind response over a reactive habit, each instance of letting go, is a step toward the freedom that is your birthright. The shelter is not elsewhere. The shelter is within. And you can come home to it right now, in this very moment.